And we're live. Excuse me, a little froggy this morning. Been froggy all day. I hope I'm not coming down with COVID. My daughter had it. I guess she's had it for about a week, and we still had her over for Christmas. We all had to mask up for Christmas. And yeah, that was a lot of fun, but hopefully we didn't get it. We'll see. What's going on, Clint? Clint was here early. It's weird, but it shows that the when I start the podcast, I haven't actually gone live, but I get it started and primed. I guess you could say primed up and ready just to hit the live button. But on YouTube, and I noticed, can't remember it was last week. Somebody got here early last week. 'Cause I primed it up early last week, like 7:20 or 30, and I can't remember who that was here. They got on real early, man, and were commenting and stuff. And I'm like, how the hell? It's not even gone live yet. How you commenting, man? But I hope everybody had a great Christmas. Before we get started, there's a couple of things I want to say. Prayers for Jason Davis. His father-in-law passed away over the holiday, and also for Sean McKinney, fellow Shiner and fellow brother, passed away just a few days ago. Prayers to Amy and the rest of his family. Tragic loss, man. He was young and a Shiner and a grower. Good guy. Horrible. A lot of you probably know him. But yeah, John McKinney no longer with us. He was on the podcast a few times. Sad, sad. Hate to see, especially some of the younger men. But you know the drill. Let me get this link shared and put some prayers up for Jason and Sean. Tragic. And I don't know if it was Christmas or not. Horrible, horrible. But I did post in the DIY Shine and Steel building, chemistry of wine and aging wine. Let me see if the file name is, excuse me, yeah, I'm getting over. I'm going to have a drink. I think I know. Chemistry of wine aging. It's a PDF file. I just uploaded it just a few minutes before the podcast started. 1:30. This is a blackberry pineapple combo. Interesting. Got a good flavor. 130 proof though. I need to boil that down a little bit. It's pretty strong. But yeah, it's chemistry of wine aging, and it talks about like I've been talking about how the organic acids and esterification and how a lot of these phenolic compounds age over time. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We'll open it up and have a look see, and it's in the DIY Shine and stuff page. I guess let me put it on the let me upload it to the militia page really quickly here as well. It'll be under the file section, so. Can't type. There we go. So it's on the militia page and in the DIY Shine Stuff page. So you'll be able to go to both and pick that up. But let me get this link shared out there. Let's see, where was that? Okay. So I hope everybody had a good Christmas. I did. I had pretty good. Sad to see my daughter sick, but it was COVID. It was she was feeling weak and coughing a lot, but it's not like I'm not sure what strain it was or anything like that, but hopefully she gets to feeling better soon. But I wasn't going to put it off. I was like, she's had it a week. Surely by now she's not going to be too contagious. But so far so good. Other than my froggy throat this morning, I haven't had any symptoms. A little runny nose, so who knows? I might have it. For me, I had it before. I've had it a couple times, actually, maybe 2 or 3 times. And for me, the worst part for me is losing my sense of taste. I can't stand my food doesn't taste. I can't smell things. It's harder to make cuts. It's it really had a big impact on my nose, man, for sure. So hopefully we don't get the old COVID. Check, make sure Mark's not on before I post on his page. So here, have to do by recent. Yeah, recent, most recent. Yeah. So he's not on. Okay. We'll post on his page if he's got something going on. Let me get these links shared. Yes, sir, Clint. I didn't get your message on the phone. I guess I left my damn phone up in the bathroom. When I went up to use the bathroom, and I was playing my game, and I was in a hurry. I set my phone down, and I was in a hurry to get back down here and get back at the game because I was in the game when I did it, and I didn't want my character getting. I hit him somewhere, but it's people can find you and shoot you. So he was. I guess he's hidden well enough. I didn't get shot. It's a pretty fun game. It's a new game. Arc Raiders. I don't know if any of y'all ever played it or not yet, but it's a pretty fun game. For those who don't know, I enjoy playing. I'm like a little kid. I still get on there and play these video games like a man child. So I hope everybody got what they wanted for Christmas. I tried to deliver. I tried my best to bring everybody what they need and what's on their list. It's funny. I did get a chance to go up and visit with Phil Billy and little Don and got to play Santa for him, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, he's cute. If y'all haven't seen Phil Billy's little boy, he's cute, but no Phil, I don't know. He's talking about getting rid of his pig. I don't know if y'all heard about that or not. Keeps getting out. Everybody keeps leaving the gate open. I told him you don't need to leave him. Have the whole yard, man. Make a little 10 by 10 pen in the corner and make a little pigsty. Give him a little coverage or something to get out of the sun in when it's hot in the winter in the summertime, and he'll be all right. Yeah, I don't know. So hopefully you'll get a little pigsty for it. Said he had a farmer that was going to take it, so I don't know. Okay, I have to take care of something real quick here. So bear with me a minute. Just a second. I have to do a little admin. Bear with me. I hate having to do all this stupid shit. You can't follow the rules. Yeah. Give me a second. Yeah, all right. Unfortunately, I have to deal with stupid shit like this. Shouldn't have to do that, but it is what it is. So I got a couple more shares if it'll do it, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to let me. I know it wouldn't. I have to do that a little bit later. All right. All right. Damn, bunch of comments. Sorry, I'm way behind. I'm starting out behind. Horrible, horrible. What's going on, my grips? Good to see you, brother. Good evening to you, too. What's going on, Curtis? Oh, man. I forgot, bro. I missed. I dropped the ball. I dropped the power ball on that. Yeah, can you imagine? What was it, like 1.7 billion? I end up getting like cash option that's over 730, 40 million, something like that. Crazy. Can you, man, that's I don't know, man. Give me that kind of money, like the world would be a safe place. I don't know what the hell I do. I don't know what I do with that kind of money, man. Crazy thinking. What's going on, Henry? Good to see you, brother. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind already. Oh, Hillbilly, what's going on, brother? Hickory King, Jimmy Red, got some red, white, blue going on. Awesome, awesome. Little barley. Man, that does sound good, brother. Hopefully we'll get a little sippy sip of that. What's going on, Monty, my brother? Good to see you, bro. Hope y'all had a good Christmas. Yeah, that was a good Christmas present for sure. Hello, Miss Lisa. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Awesome. Yeah, I saw Elm Bishop posting. He's starting to tap his trees, tapping some maple and some black walnut trees. Starting to get a little, I guess at time. It's gonna be a little cold this week. Next week's gonna be a little bit cold, but I guess this past week was pretty good temperature. But yeah, we're supposed to get back down to freezing starting tomorrow evening. But it's been a nice week, man. It's been real pleasant during the Christmas holidays and that. What's going on, Mr. Morgan? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, we love them Thirsty Thursdays. I was not able to be there this Thursday. I was whipping them reindeer, man. I was trying to get everything done so I could get there, man, but I just didn't get it done in time. Damn, somebody called shots. I needed one though. I started out with one. I needed one. I had a little frog in my throat. It may try to clear that right up now, didn't it? See? Tell me this don't have medicinal properties. Shit'll kill that COVID right off your tongue, man. All right, we got our first question from Clint. Now he's been reading up on wine and learn a little bit more about it. Should a beginner wine brandy make start learning with grapes or apple? I would say whatever's cheapest, in which case would probably be apple. Whatever the fruit you can start with, the cheapest is probably going to be your best, unless you've done, if you've done a lot of conversions, you ferment a lot, you're familiar with it, you're familiar with, using airlocks and keeping things sanitary. Because when you're making wine, one of the biggest differences is, open fermentation is no longer an option, right? Even well, if you're going to make a brandy and you're going to only just go through primary fermentation with your wine, it's truly not a wine. It's just a fermentation, fruit fermentation, a must for a brandy. Some people do it that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. Um, doesn't get as complex flavors and stuff that you will if you age it and go into secondary fermentation and put it under the airlock and age it for a while. But then again, you don't have to worry about the bacteria and things like that. You don't have to worry about using an airlock, and you can kind of open ferment or just put a cover over it to keep the fruit flies out and stuff. But so there's two different ways. You can do it that way, and you can make an okay brandy, and use some infusion and stuff, and get a decent brandy out of it. But if you really want, a complex brandy with some really multiple flavors, you want a front end and middle and back, and a lot of phenolics, then you really should try to age it and do a secondary fermentation under an airlock and go that route. But starting with a cheap fruit definitely would be my recommendation. If you can get some grapes real cheap, that's fine. Or just using grape juice, or apple juice. You don't have to have the actual fruit. You can get this 100% fruit juice. And I think starting gravity on those is like a 1040, 1045 on like the apple juice. So just get the 100% without any of the potassium metabisulfates or sodium sorbates or any of that stuff in there, and you'll be all right. And it'll you can make a decent wine with just the Welch's, 100% Welch's or 100%, any 100%. Just look on your label to make sure it doesn't have those preservatives in it. And if it doesn't, those are the ones to get. And you have to look hard because most of them will have it. So you have to get the ones that don't. So you don't want potassium metabisulfate, you don't want potassium sorbate, and you don't want sodium sorbate, and there's no sodium. There's some other sodium benzoate. You don't want that. So any of those without those is going to be okay. So you can definitely start with the juice, just the juice, and actually, when I do the grapes with grapes or apple with apple, I'll use some juice to go along with it, just help it along, right? So it makes it a little bit cheaper and increases your yield, and you don't notice any difference in your flavoring as long as you get that 100% real juice and with no preservatives added. Yeah, he is, man. He was there early, man. He was early. Hello, Nelda from Point Blank, Texas. Hope y'all had a Merry Christmas down there. Welcome to the show. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about wine making and brandy makings. For those that question, why would we be talking about wine? This is distilling. So you have to make a wine before you make a brandy. And there's, like I said, there's a couple of different ways. There's many ways to do it, but there's either you'll do the primary fermentation and go straight into the pot after it ferments, or you can do a secondary fermentation, get it off that yeast and yeast bed and flocculants and get it, I use a siphon hose to siphon it over. Some people use pumps, some people just pour it over, but trying to get it off that yeast bed so you don't want a lot of that yeast flavor. And that's a good thing to do in any fermentation that is extended, right? So if you can get it off that yeast bed, you can save that yeast, you can use it again, and there's good nutrients in there, so that's all good. But separate it. So you don't want to get in winemaking, you really don't want to get a lot of that in brandy making. You don't want to get a lot of that yeast flavor because it's not good, and it's going to give you some off flavors. So what's going on, baby? BPV, Barrel Proof Veteran. I like that name, man. What's up, brother? Hope y'all had a Merry Christmas. Tonight we're talking about wine and brandy. So we're going to talk a little bit about making some brandy but we have to start with wine. So we're going to talk a little bit about wine and nutrients. This is something a lot of people that use grains and malted grains and stuff, they're not really familiar with using a lot of yeast nutrients, because with most grain fermentations, you don't really need to add a lot. Wouldn't hurt to add just a pinch, like an all corn especially. But if you have, malted grains, you just definitely don't need any kind of nutrients to go along with the malts, because those malts have the yan and fan that we're looking for. But in most all fruits, they're going to be deficient. Some more so than others. Some will have yan and fan, but most all of them don't have enough. And I would add all my yeast nutrients at one time initially right off the bat, but I've since learned, I've been doing this about 10 years on the winemaking, but I learned over time that sometimes it's better to step your firm the nutrients. So as you go, add a pinch. As it goes a little further, add a pinch. As it goes a little further, instead of adding, let's say, a whole teaspoon, you do a quarter teaspoon, quarter teaspoon, quarter teaspoon, quarter teaspoon throughout the whole, week and a half of primary fermentation, and step feed it. And supposedly that prevents it from getting too active and overly active and overeating and getting too vigorous, because you're really in winemaking, because in winemaking you're drinking the mash, the must that you make. So there's a lot more care that goes into it. Now, if you're distilling it, that's going to be a little bit different story, because you can distill out a lot of those flavors and stuff. But when I do the grappa. I sure do, brother. That's one of my finest fermentation. Everybody that tries it loves it. I don't have a lot left, and I'm going to have to make some, but unfortunately, it takes a couple of years. I mature unless they use a box wine, which you could definitely use a good, white wine. Uh, as long as it's starting out with a good white wine, decent white wine, box wine is fine. You can start with that if you want to, cut corners and get ahead of the game. You can definitely start with that and distill, just distill some, white box wine, and that if it's sweet wine, it'll turn out pretty well for you, believe it or not. But yeah, it's definitely going to have to do some grappa for sure. I gave one of my last jars. I got a couple of small jars left, and that's the last of my grappa. I gave my buddy one of my last ones. He the only shine he'd ever had was just like plain old moonshine that wasn't cut well, and he associated moonshine with bitter, strong, not good. So I knew this. My buddy had never had good moonshine, so like there's a lot more to it than that, man. And he's like, I don't know, man. It's always been strong and bitter, never really tasted good. I'm like, I never had any that been made right and cut right. So yeah. What's going on, Mr. Palin? Good to see you, brother. 4 degrees there. Oh my goodness. It's gonna Sunday night is when it's gonna get cold here. So I got another day before I can bring my plants in. I had them in the foyer, but I was able to put them back out for a week and open up the foyer. I don't know where they're in big planters. I got to find a place for them here in the house somewhere. But freaking hoarder house, man. I don't have room for anything. What's going on, Cave Daddy? Good to see you. Yeah, man, I love it. Yeah, yeah, definitely should. Good time to cook some corn, but it's a good time for winemaking too. Wintertime, temperatures are down a little bit, and when you get in the mid to upper 70s, about room temperature where we like to keep it, most of us. Me, I'm not. I'll put a little space heater in a couple of rooms in the house, and I'll let it get cold as hell. Just wear sweatpants and sweatshirt, and as long as it doesn't freeze the pipes, I'm fine that way. But unfortunately, Miss Claus doesn't mind it either. She doesn't mind that. But yeah, it's a good time for winemaking. If you can keep your house room temperature mid 70s, mid to upper 70s, that's perfect temperature for winemaking and the wine yeast. Awesome. Gotta get you some bad mo's. I got me a bad mo. Yes, sir. Got me a bad. Actually, no, maybe it's over there. Here at the bar now. Yeah, gotta get your bad mo's. Those are good barrels. Yeah, grapes are complicated, but the beautiful thing about a grape is um, they age well, and they can age for a long period of time, and they tend to get better over long periods of time. Whereas a lot of people don't realize that. They think all wine gets better with time, and it doesn't. So the some of the wines that are made with like cherries, those do pretty well. Those age well and age over time fairly well. But like apple wine, no. And plum wine, I make plum wine, and no, after a year or two, it starts degrading. So not all wine, is primed to age over long periods of time. So uh, you know, definitely have to do some little research on each different thing that you do ferment. There's a lot of different, fruits. I guess we can go through the different types of fruit and do they age well. Maybe a good graph to put up here and find for y'all, but not all fruit does. And I've noticed my plum wine. I do a plum wine and I make a plum brandy, a Silvovich. But some of the plum wine that I kept, it was good. And then after a few years, it's not near as good as it was when it was a year and a half, 2 years old. So it's definitely going downhill, and it's probably going to go into boiling pot and get turned in some Slivovich or mixed brandy. Probably, I think I'm going to do a lot of the some of my wines that are starting to, you know, uh, oxidize and go bad, right? So if you got any wine bottles in the refrigerator, you know, you can dump those in too and just make a big mixed brandy, which is what I will. But yeah, Welch's grape concentrate. Yeah, but you get the juice or the concentrate. One thing I do love about the concentrate is you can add it to juice, and instead of having to add sugar and to bring up, you know, the starting gravity, because most of them, your fruit juices are about 1040, 1050 tops. So you can add some concentrate, and it'll make the flavors more concentrated, and it also brings up the gravity pretty well without, it doesn't have all the water, right? So it's not getting, you know, it's not getting thinned out by having it diluted by all the water. So it helps out a lot by using that concentrate. Sure does. What's going on, Mr. Grigsby? Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Appreciate you, bro. And for those that haven't watched, Mr. Grigsby and Ian on Still Talking, you got to catch them on Monday nights at 9. Got to watch it, man. They have a lot of great people on there, a lot of distillers, a lot of great guests on there. It's a great show. So definitely got to watch those guys, man. Uncle Joey and all of them over, and Matt and Ian and Sean have a great show going, man. Yeah, definitely have to check them out. Right, and it does, you know, especially I've noticed that with like dark grapes, and I've noticed it now a lot of times. It comes down to yeast selection. Certain yeasts will give you a little bit more of a sulfury, you know, sulfur, and other yeasts that are kind of designed to help prevent some of that, right? So it's really critical in yeast selection. Also, um, keeping everything, all your parameters really tight. Keep your temperature really tight, pH, your nutrients, step feeding, not overfeeding initially. Uh, if you stress your yeast, that tends to create some of these sulfurs. But it tends to happen a lot worse with specific dark fruits for me. So my plums tend to do it. The dark grapes tend to do it a little more so than the others. But yeah, you can run into the sulfur smell with anything. And if you're making the into a brandy. And if you do get that sulfur smell, a lot of times with your wine, aging will, over a long period of time, like for the secondary, during your secondary fermentation, and we'll read about that in the PDF file that I uploaded. If y'all check it out, a lot of that sulfur will end up being a sweet taste over long. So it will correct, and it'll help things. But if it has a real strong sulfur, really strong sulfur, probably best to distill it. And definitely, yes, you definitely want to run that through some copper mash, and it, in having copper in your vapor path for your distillate is becomes even more important, especially making brandies. Because you do run into quite a bit more sulfur with the fruits than you do with your grains. What's going on, Mr. Dance? Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Hope y'all had a Merry Christmas, my friend. Yes, sir. We love us some grappa. Yeah, that's one of my. What's going on, Brian? That's one of my more popular fermentations that people have tried. That's out of all the different things I've done, I think my grappa is probably one of the most popular. You know, that and that root beer is pretty good, and a lot of them haven't had my whiskeys yet, but I haven't aged any in a while. I've been doing a lot of wine making, a lot of brandies, and I haven't done a lot of grain. And so, but the grappa definitely hands down is probably one of my best. And I make a lot of wine and stuff too. I've got cases stacked in there of wine. We used to drink a lot more wine back in the day than we drink now, but Ann's got or Miss Santa's got diabetes, so we don't drink wine as much as we used to. We used to be little winos. But yeah, I don't. I will say, hey, what's going on, Mr. Meredith? Good to see you, brother. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas. And I love the videos that you made. Those AI videos were funny as shit, man. I loved them. I love those, man. Keep them coming. They're funny as hell. I will say, Cave Daddy, that my grappa is not a traditional grappa. I did do a traditional grappa uh, when I did my other grappa. You know, of course, I didn't use grape wine grapes, which would have probably made it even better. But I got some big ass um, table grapes, Welch's table grapes, and I got a really good deal on them. And so I loaded up on those, and I made quite a bit. But I made a lot of, pressed them and everything, and got my juice out of it. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to throw all this pulp and stems away. I'm going to save this pumice, right? That's what they call it. I'm going to save all this and do a traditional grappa with that. The starting gravity was hardly nothing. It was horrible. I did add some juice to it from my grapes and added some sugar to get the gravity up. And so I did them both separately. And I will say that traditional grappa made with pumice stems and sugar is horrible. It's not great. I mean, it's better than the sugar shine, but it's not notably better. It's a little bit better. It gives it at least a little interesting flavor, something different than just a clean sugar shine. But it was hot. It wasn't good at all. But the grappa was fantastic. And I did, of course, I didn't age the pumice and all that, and did that initially. So it did jar age, but I made the brandy of that straight up. But the actual wine that I made with the white wine, I made I call sweet heat. It's a white wine, and I stopped the fermentation a little bit earlier, while it still got some sweetness, and I can retain some of that sweetness in the wine, and that's also what I use to make the grappa with. So that, I think, had a big play also in making that grappa real sweet, and give it a unique sweetness. It's a floral, um, fruity floral sweetness. It's really good. I attribute that to doing it that way. Also, to the wine, to the yeast I used. I used a Premier Blanc, Red Star Premier Blanc, which is a really good yeast for your white wines. Have I ever mashed in nixtamalized corn? Well, you stumped me on nixtamalized. I'm not sure what you're talking about. The ancient Mesoamerican process of soaking and cooking dried corn in an alkaline solution like lime water to soften the kernels, remove the hull, and boost the nutritional value, especially niacin, B3, making it digestible, enhancing the flavor. No, I've actually not heard of this process, brother, and I'm glad you brought it up. And yes, I Google it, because when I don't profess to know everything. We're all learning together. But yeah, that sounds very interesting. I have heard this. I have actually seen this before, but I forgot. I didn't remember what it was called, but I do now that you mention it. The lime water and all that, but I don't. I didn't know it was called nixtamalization. But yeah, I've never tried that. I have seen that in a video. I'm not sure. I don't think that they were making shine with it, so I don't think it was a distilling video. Uh, but yeah, that's a new one on me, and glad you brought it up. See, now we're all learning. We're all learning together. But no, it sounds very interesting, and it sounds like it makes some pretty good shine too. They use it a lot for making the dough for tortillas and tamales. So I guess it's a process involves boiling corn and lime, soaking it overnight, rinsing off the hull, and then grinding the soft kernel, the germ inside into a dough. That's probably really good. Yeah, very interesting. Starts with dry maize. There's a little video on it. Maybe we'll show that little video here in a little bit, showing how that process is done. But no, I've not tried that, and it definitely sounds interesting. So It's definitely going to be something I will try. Thanks for sharing, brother. See, we all learning. Yeah, it is. It's rough as hell, man. Basically, it's a sugar shine with a little bit of grape juice, and the skins make it bitter. So the white grape skins are bitter, which is why you want to get them off your wine right off the bat. Right now, for the dark grapes, you want to leave those skins in because that's what gives the wine its color and gives it a little bit of bitterness. So that's why a lot of your red wines and your darker wines have that bitter, um, I guess tannin type flavors because of the skins that are left in to get that color. Because once you take the skin off the grape, well, is they're all about the same color, right? But that skin is what gives it the color. So you have to leave those red skins and dark black skins in for the wine to have that good coloration to it, right? But with your white grapes and your white wine, no, you want to take those off after. Basically, what I do is there are. That's good to know, Alan. I've not. Have you ever tried it? Hey, brother, doing good. Hope everything's well with you as well. Have you tried this nixtamalization for any of your distillations? That's I have heard of something, but it was like I said, it was for cooking, and I think they were doing it to make the actual flour that they were using for tamales and stuff. So I've never done that process for distilling, but there are some distilleries doing that. Very interesting because I would say that would make for a unique flavor. Definitely something that's new to me. I love that's why I love the show, man. I'm learning, and a lot of times people bring in stuff like this and something that I'm not familiar with. So yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I'm not. Is that what they call it? Nixted, nixted. Cool. See, I was saying I don't know. I don't profess to know it all. I love learning new stuff, man. So is it? Well, I mean, it sounds like it'd be pretty easy to make, So I guess if you need to get some lime, and you're definitely going to have to use a food grade lime, not something that's going to be, you know, burning you up. So, but yeah, very, very interesting. Definitely. But yeah, back to the grappa. It was when you do make the white wine, as soon as you crush all your grapes, press them. You can either 99 it, or if you want to use your pectic enzymes and do that overnight, and then the next morning, just there's nothing of the pulp left after you use a little pectic enzyme on them, and then just strain it, pour it through a strainer, and get all those skins out. That's why you don't want to when you prepare. That's why they stomp them. You don't want to blend. You don't want to grind. You don't want to macerate your grapes because it makes it a lot more difficult to remove those skins. So that's why they stomp them, right? So you can just crush them, just basically, crunch them all up. And you just want to make it to where you can get to the insides with the pectin enzyme. It'll eat all that pulp up in the heartbeat, and it just leaves the skins, and you can easily pour it through a strainer and take all the skins off because it will make your wine bitter. You definitely want to get those skins off your white wines. That'd be interesting. Little rye. Definitely would add little nutrients to it and, give it a little peppery taste. That'd be interesting, for some wine for sure. Yeah, corn cob wine's another thing. That's another one that's similar to that. It's basically, the people that they had wineries and stuff over in Italy. A lot of times they would give the pumice. Uh, they didn't have as efficient extraction methods as what we have today back in the old days. And we're talking about old Europe. And they would give all the workers the pumice and stems and stuff. The workers would take it home, they'd press it, they'd add sugar, water, and make their own wine and then distill it into a grappa. And that was, that was a traditional thing that they did, and I'm sure it was better than just what we have today, because I'm sure today we have a lot better extraction methods. I'm not sure if they use pectic enzymes, so there's probably a lot of pulp and a lot of juice and a lot of things, so it wasn't just skins and stems, right? uh, yeah, it wasn't good. Yeah, apple and rye, definitely a good wine, and a good brandy. But I was just talking about you, Alan. I was just talking about you got your taps. I saw your video earlier. Got all his taps out, tapping all his black walnut and maple trees. I don't. Will it be okay through this next little cold snap? I know this past couple of weeks were perfect for it, and it'll be good, I guess, till February, hopefully early March. But yeah, I hope you get a lot of sap, bro. I've not done it to the wine. Actually, I guess you could add it to the wine. The mash would probably be just as good as anything, and let it bond, because the sulfur will definitely, it'll bond to the copper, or to that copper really well. That's the whole purpose. Hey, what's going on, Mash Brothers? Cheers. It's a little shot time. I definitely need some. Get buttered up. I haven't drank much today, and I got to drink this scratchy throat away to help keep me from getting that COVID. It's my COVID remedy. Um, it depends. I like making my grappa with the white grapes. But no, you can make brandy with any grapes or any fruit. Any of the fruits out there that you can make a good wines with any fruits or any brandies. Get creative. But yeah, I like using the white grapes for the grappa. But traditionally, I mean, you can make it with anything. If you do, I would suggest probably not using the skins, because the color's not going to be as important because you're distilling it, right? I'm not sure what phenolics you get off the. I'm sure there's some skin phenolics that you get that may tend to give it a little bit more of a distinct taste if you do leave them on there. So I guess it would be okay depending on what you want. But yeah, what's going on, Anthony? Good to see you, brother. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Awesome, awesome. Well, that's great, brother. I wished I lived in wine country. There's when the sale price gets pretty low on them, if I can get them 99 cents a pound or cheaper, that's my trigger pull. I'll get, if they're good grapes, I'll load up and I'll get about 30, 40 pounds, and start making some wines and stuff. But yeah, I'm a what's on sale kind of guy. But we do have there is a fruit guy. He lives quite a bit away from me. He's in northern Indiana, almost to Illinois. I know John Ben's driven over there and got some stuff off of him, and he's on Facebook, and I think he just donated a bunch to some food kitchens over the Christmas holidays. Great people. But they have fruit that's going to be going bad soon, and maybe a few little bad spots on it, or getting a little dated, and instead of sending it to somebody to just till it in and use it for fertilizer or hog farm or whatever, they uh, they sell it, right? And so it's great place to go buy brandy if you have a place like that close by, or have growers. In a lot of these wineries, they'll go in and they'll trim the hell out of these grapes, man. They don't want, you would think that they want their vines and everything to be full of grapes. They don't. I mean, they'll go in and thin them out and just throw the grapes on the ground. They don't want a big, huge bundles everywhere. They try to stress them. It's a different. It's different than than what logic would have you believe that they do, right? Uh, they trim the shit out of them. They'll cut them way back. So uh, you can go in behind while they're trimming. If they don't mind, just pick those things up, man, and take them home, run them. A lot of times too, they'll have pumice, and if you have a good press, you may be able to vacuum press out and get some decent juice out of it. But as far as traditional grappas, it's just No, no, it's not my favorite. But if you can do it with the juice and with a good wine, it makes them really a really good brandy. Some of the best you'll ever drink for sure. That process is what's going on right now, man. We're passing it on and teaching everybody, and what you learn here, I hope you pass on and invite your friends, and that's this is what we're doing. This is the whole reason for it, is so we can pass on the information to you guys, and you can learn and share your knowledge with us, so we can all learn together. Nixmalities, that's just something old Santa learned tonight. So yeah, we're all here learning and passing and sharing the knowledge, and hopefully it all gets passed down to the younger generations. I think there's going to be a lot of younger generations that's going to pick up and continue the craft, I'm sure. Yeah, definitely want to try some of this nixtamalized corn liquor though. That sounds interesting. I wonder how it makes it more unique in the flavor, you know, because I'm guessing that husk probably has some bitterness to it, right? That if you can get that out of there, it may lose some of that bitterness. But I don't know. Lime may add it back in. I'm not quite sure. You've not tried it yet either. Nutty profile, interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking that get rid of some of the bitterness and get more of the germ in there. It's very interesting. I've never thought of doing that. And right, right. Definitely sounds interesting. I would. Yeah, I saw a video of that. I guess they were using it for the flour and to make. It was a traditional video. I love watching these old third world videos where they're, doing stuff all by hand instead of by machine and stuff. And they were doing it with lye. And I'm not sure. I don't think it showed how they got the lye, but I guarantee you, I was right. They were using wood ashes to get that lye. They wasn't they wasn't going to the store and buying a lye. But I have also seen a lot of interesting lye making videos for soap making. I watch a lot of that, all that kind of stuff. I love it. I know Lisa loves it too. A lot of and and that's something we've been talking about. Adding to DIY shine and steel bidding page is a lot of old world stuff. In crafting and home canning and preservation of food and more living off the grid type, things, because I love all that kind of stuff. And it just gives us a little bit more to talk about. Maybe we have to create another group, or maybe we'll just lump them all into one so we can talk about shine and canning meats and fruits and vegetables and but I love watching all those old videos of them making stuff. Yeah, yeah. And some of those videos were Native Americans that were doing it. Right, right, right. So they're just getting at that germ in the middle and getting rid of that husk. I bet that husk probably does add some bitterness. Right, right. Yeah, we are getting a little more milder winters than what we used to have. Used to you had to do it a little later, but we had a good warm snap. Maybe I need to drink another one. Had a good little warm snap, and that was welcome. Yeah, I was wondering how they reacted to the cold. I've never done tapping. Never have, but I've got some woods full of maples and probably definitely some black walnuts in there too, but mostly lots and lots of maples trees up in the eastern Kentucky. It's a good drive though for me. It's about 2.5 hour drive, and it'd be tough to, it's not real convenient. If it was like in a mile, 10 miles, 20 miles away, it'd be, but it's kind of hard to tap when they're that far. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I like the process and how they uh, boil and cook off all the waters out of the sap. And I was thinking about doing that for watermelons and some of the fruits and stuff that are really heavily watered down. But I didn't get a chance to do it when I did my watermelon uh, brandy, and it was horrible anyway. I don't think it would have helped much. Almond Brothers Shine tastes like uh, what was it? What was that? I know Alan knows it too. I used to listen a lot of. What was that? Mm, I know the song you're thinking of, but I can't remember the lyrics, man. I'm getting too damn old. A couple years ago, I could have had that answer in the heartbeat. You know, I've been thinking about just take a string and use an air hose, or air line, air compressor line, and tie something on it and blow it through your worm. And then you've seen those bottle brushes. Get an oversized bottle brush and just tie the line to the end of that and just pull it through and just keep circulating it. And I guess you could tie it both ends and just pull it through. And as it pulls through, just keep circulating the path, right? And doing it over and over and over again. I guess you tie the string to both sides of it, right? And I was thinking about making something like that and selling it at one time. Uh, but yeah, it's one of those ideas that never come to fruition. But it's like a bottle brush and just blow the line through the copper coil, and then at the other end, just tie it to each end of the bottle brush and just pull it through, along with let it soak first, and then use that to kind of scrub and clean some of the green off the oxidized. But I think that would work pretty well if you could do that. Just keep pulling it through several times. I was thinking about, maybe making a drill with a wheel and just kind of circulating it and just kind of doing it fast, and just go all the way through the worm out, all the way through the worm and out. But if you could do something like that, hopefully one of y'all invents it and sells it on. I've thought about that in the past doing it, but I just think about a lot of things that never I end up doing. But yeah, somebody wants to come up with that and put it out there. I'm sure a lot of people would do it, especially a lot of these commercial distilleries and craft distillers that use worms. They would love to have something like that. Yeah, I think citric acid works about as well as vinegar, and it's a little easier, and you can concentrate it. Trying to think of they have a acid that you can get at like Home Depot, and it's a little bit more concentrated. Um, and works well. But be careful using hydrogen peroxide with it, because that really it oxidizes it, and that can damage your copper and cause it to turn green quicker. It roughs up the surface. It etches it too much. It's too harsh. It's not a slow, it's light acid. It accelerates it. So um, adding that to it really etches the outside of your copper, which makes it oxidize quicker. and actually end up making it turn green sooner. So it's better to soak and go a slow cleaning process than try to accelerate it using an oxidizer, which is what that hydrogen peroxide is. It's great if you want to make a spray to turn your copper green and make it a filigree or something on a light or something you want to antique. It's great for that. So if you want to do that, yeah. But yeah, stay away from the hydrogen peroxide. We found that kind of does more harm than good. Used to make a lot of rose wine using Niagara grapes and a handful of wild fox grapes per gallon. Red gooseberries, yeah. My grandparents had a gooseberry and another berry. What was it? It was really bitter. It was a green berry and very bitter. I can't, man, it's been so long. Yeah, well, it just does real well. What was that? I think on it for a little bit. Yeah, Welch just makes good wine. People, I'm sure some of these wine, sommeliers and all these wine connoisseurs would scoff at it, but I've made some really good wine with it. When I first started making wine, I would take it to the Christmas holidays, and people were like, "Oh, so Joe, you starting to make wine?" They were like prepared for the hold their nose and take a drink kind of stuff, and I had some good dark grape wine, good dark wine, a little bitter, but not. It was a good red wine, and I had some sweet heat, and then I had some the cherry wine, and that was really good. And so they tried it out, and they were prepared for the worst. So they take little tiny sips, and they're like, "Oh, that's not bad." They were surprisingly shocked, and before you know it, they're guzzling it. And it was really pretty high proof wine too. It had a lot of alcohol in it, and they were liking it. That cherry wine was really really good, and they're like, "Wow!" And next thing you know, everybody's getting hammered because this was pretty high proof. It was high proof wine, and so they were digging it, and they were like, "Wow, this is pretty good. And how are you doing this?" And then they all started getting interested in making it until I told them, what I was involved. And they're like, "Yeah, I think I just buy the bottle. Never mind." You know, they don't have time for that. But yeah, it was interesting. But that was kind of gave me encouragement to continue. That was years ago, and they're still asking, and they like the plum wine. Those are real popular too. But it's just doesn't age well. For me anyway, didn't age well. Some 1970. Well, did you store it on its side? Was the cork kept wet? As long as the cork is wet, it's my understanding that it'll be fine. But if you store it standing up and you allow your cork to dry out, then it over time it can oxidize and get air through that cork, believe it or not. But it should be okay as long as it was on its side. Yeah, I had some good wine that I brought over from when I went to France. I went to France when I was younger, and brought back some good Bordeaux wines and stuff, and learned how to store them, and on their side. It'll be all right, man. Just give it a try, and I mean, you'll know if it's not good. You probably know by the smell, and when you pour it into a glass and start looking at it, if it's gone bad, you'll know. If it's oxidized really bad, you'll know. But I've also seen some really interesting how they put these when they pull the corks off some of these really old wines and stuff, because these corks will just crumble, right? So they have special ways to remove them, and man, it was very interesting. This this guy went through a whole. They have like a slide that they slide around the outside of the cork at the same time they're pulling it. They got something going in like along the out. It's very interesting, and trying and then the cork, sometimes it'll break and it can crumble up, and I guess but yeah, it was a real big deal. And the way the dude was doing it, I would want if I was spending $1,000 on a bottle. I would want it open in front of me. I would want to see the theatrics and all the stuff that they went through to get that cork off because it was something else, man. It was, I mean, it was a big deal and very dramatic. Will it come out? Will it break? Oh, Dermo. Oh, it came out good. Now you get the oohs and ahs. I would do that in front of the purchaser. Of course, I guess they don't want them to see it if it messes up. But yeah, if I'm spending that kind of money on a bottle, I want to see that cork come out. What's going on here, Billy? Good to see you, brother. Hope y'all had a happy holidays as well, my friend. And a new holidays and a new location. So I bet the his pace of life has changed dramatically. I'm sure. Vegas moved from Vegas to the country. That's awesome. Soul shine. There you go. Soul Shine. That's what it was. Almond Brothers. Soul Shine. There we go. When somebody said Soul Shine, I'm like, I think that's Almond Brothers. That's the answer. And then I had to Google it to make sure. And I think that is it. Yeah, it is Soul Shine. Thank you, brother. He's been moving. How's it going, Patrick? Good to see you. Can you break down how the proofing of the final product works? Now, if we're talking about like a brandy or a whiskey, um, there's a lot that goes into it. Doing your proper cuts and separating your cuts and being able to identify certain esters that you can pick out of your heads. A lot of people are like, oh, heads, it's all bad. Actually, there's some sweetness in those heads if you can isolate it. And so you'll see, a mixologist, somebody that knows how, not like a mixed drink, but someone that's really good at proofing will be able to taste those specific esters, isolate them, and when they proof it, they'll add some tails, certain areas of the tails, and certain little bits of, and that's an art in of itself. That's really a determining factor in what what some of your top shelf stuff is having proper cuts, making proper cuts before it ages. We know aging adds about 60 to 80% of the flavor. So the 30 to 40%, the 20 to 40% that you can add to that is what really makes your distillate unique and your whiskey or bourbon unique. So how you do those cuts is what gives it that uniqueness. Because if you just add hearts to a barrel, it's just going to taste like hearts in a barrel. It's not going to have quite the sophistication of like we've talked about in the past. You know, little bits of that head going in with little bits of the tail, and how you have some of the acids and the oils estrifying, and that's what the same process in aging wines. You've got a lot of good flavors and phenolics and compounds that are created during the aging process other than just the barrel aging. So if you don't have those in there to start with, you're not going to get as much character and some unique flavors out of it as you would if you had them in there. So just hearts in a barrel is not going to be as good as something that's made with it's it just breaks down to experience, really. You can't, it's not something you can teach, because you can't teach a specific smell or taste, right? I can describe it, but until you actually smell it, and some people don't have the nose for it, especially if you've had COVID recently or have COVID, and some people just don't have the taste buds for it, right? I mean, you know, I can drink certain drinks and pick up a few notes, but other people can drink the same thing I'm drinking, and they're picking up a lot of different notes that I don't get because I just don't my taste buds aren't sophisticated enough. I've not been trained to pick up on those notes, and you have to train your palate to pick up those things. So that's an art in of itself, Patrick. That's probably, anybody can mash in, anybody can distill, anybody can cut hearts. That's not hard to do. But the art of the final product and what goes into that barrel that gives it that unique character is being able to make those cuts and pick out some of those esters, that are going to give it some unique flavor without giving it a headsy flavor, right? And know how to, eliminate the acetone and your, ethyl acetates and some of those flavors, but isolate some of those good esters, and add those. And the same with some of your oils, and being able to isolate some of the oils that you get in the tails, and some of those are going to be good, some of them are not so good. And being able to isolate those and combine that with the hearts to age. And Al will tell you, that's the art of making the top shelf, because anybody can just put hearts in a barrel and come out with a pretty good shine, but it's just not going to have the character in the aging process, right? Because it's just not the barrel that's adding the flavor; it's the chemical reactions that are taking place in the alcohol itself over time. So that's why you can use staves, you can use spirals, you can use all these things, but it's not going to have the time to mature chemically. That's why a lot of times people, even in jars, you can put alcohol in a jar, and people are like, man, I forgot that shine was up there, man. I tasted it. It'd been up there for a year. Man, I drank some of that's the best tasting stuff ever. I don't know what happened. I don't remember it being that good when I put it up there. And it wasn't. It was because it went through a lot of chemical process. A lot of phenolics were created through the aging process, and it ages in jars, not like it would in a barrel. Of course, you're not getting the oak and a lot of the interactions with the woods and the tannins and other things, but the chemical processes are taking place in the esterifications, and creating good flavors, right? And sometimes something that's not so great as a white dog will end up being one of your better fermentations. I also noted that, yeah, I keep heads, in certain heads, I'll keep it. And then I noticed once, I guess it was mid run. So it was one of these esters that, um, I talk about this a lot. I keep, this is for contact cleaning solution, right? And it says glass cleaner on it, right? And I use, mid heads, and for glass cleaning, it just whatever goes in there, side heads, but and it sat in there forever. So I do a whole thing, and then by the time it got to the bottom, it'd probably been in this little thing for a year, right? And man, I would squirt it on a well, here's one that I squirted earlier to clean my glasses on a Kleenex, and I was smelling it. I was like, damn, man, that smells good. It used to smell like acetone and other headsy, and it's horrible. But man, and after a while, and it's because those chemical processes were taking place and actually making some damn good smell. I wanted to drink it, but it been stored in that plastic, and I'm really conscious about microplastics, and I know it was full of microplastics. I wouldn't dare. But man, it smells so good. I wanted to taste it, And I actually might put a drop on my tongue. But yeah, so that's it's an art in itself, Patrick, and a damn good question, and it's something that you have to experience. And I guess if you would have to be brought into an environment with a master distiller or somebody that was a master at making these cuts, and to taste a lot of these things that they go in. If you even on Master Distiller the show, the ones that are very knowledgeable, you'll see how they'll sample some of their heads and some of their tails, and they're mixing little bits of this and that, like a mad scientist, and that's what they're doing. They're just picking out different different good, and that's why making small cuts sometimes in smaller vessels instead of making your cuts in big huge quart jars or something. If you put them in little half-pint jars, you can kind of isolate those things a little better while you're learning. Definitely a good way to learn and be able to isolate some of those interesting flavors. Damn good question though. And that's what we're going to talk about too in winemaking. How a lot of and I uploaded it for those that don't know. I uploaded this. There's a file in the DIY Shine Stuff and the Militia page. It's called Chemistry of Wine Aging, and it talks about the same things. There's a lot of things that are created during the aging process, and it's the same thing with brandies or whiskeys and other distillates. It's very similar, if not, well, some of them are exact, of course, like in the brandies, how they mature. But same processes, a lot of the same things that are happening there, happening in liquor in the jar. And I know if you've done it this long enough, you put some okay stuff in a jar, and you just drink something else, and if you're like me, a lot of times it doesn't get a chance to get old, but I've been making a lot of different brandies, so I've had a lot of my brandies have a chance to mature, char mature. It definitely helps for sure. What's going on, Mr. Collier? How you doing, brother? I hope y'all had a Merry Christmas. Hope y'all doing well. Um, I think he's talking about cuts. I think he's talking about making cuts, and at least I assumed he was. But using distilled water is a good way as well, or using sweet waters. They'll not tend to cloud up on you as much, and you definitely interesting. They were talking about using lime. Because when you're proofing, you definitely don't want to have a lot of uh, lime or a high alkaline content in your proofing, or you'll get very clouding, you'll get particulates in your distillate, and that's called from saponification. And as earlier, you remember I was talking about the soap making process, and that's exactly what happens if you use a really high alkaline um, water to proof with. Is it'll saponify, and you'll get little floaties in there, and you wonder where in the hell did those come from? And it's basically the interaction with the oils in there. So the alkaline water with some of those oils from the tails will saponify and actually make some little floaties for you if it doesn't cloud up. So getting cloudy too. So a lot of times people want to use, and two, if trying to use the same temperature. So if your alcohol's at room temperature, use room temperature, water instead of ice cold water out of the tap or something like that, or really cold water, because that'll cause it to sometimes um, get cold and do a little cold distillation where it kind of clouds up on you as well. So, and it's just interactions with oils in the distillate. All right, how far? Oh, I'm way behind. Not too far, about 15. But yeah, and proofing down, you'll want to use a hydrometer if that was your question. There's a proofing hydrometer, and you don't want to get any sugars or anything in there that will change the viscosity of the alcohol. So if you want to try to proof and add sweetness by adding something syrupy or something like that, you're going to have to use math. Um, and it's going to be a little tougher, but you can just use your math and you know know that if you take something that's 150 proof and add a third of that volume with something sweet and water filled, then that's going to cut a third off that 150 proof. So it's going to be probably closer to 100 proof. And if you add another third, it's going to be 50 proof, right? So you have to use that kind of math to do it if it has anything that's going to change your viscosity, because that's how our hydrometers work. Yeah. What I'm saying is not the solution. So I'm talking about taking some twine, basically some string, and tying it something that will get caught up, tying a ball of cotton to it or something like that, right? And then put that into your worm and take some compressed air and blow it on through and let the twine follow behind it all the way through till it comes out the other end of the worm, right? And then untie that ball of cotton or whatever and tie a bottle brush. You've seen these bottle brushes, and on one end it'll have a loop, but if you can take some bristles off and put another loop on the other side, and then tie the string to both sides of the loop and just pull that brush all the way through, and then you can add your you know as your acid water, your citric acid water to that and scrub at the same time. So you just keep continuously pulling this bottle brush through your worm and keep brushing it. That way you can get a little bit of scrubbing action instead of just soaking, right? So if you get some tough oxidized, green stuff, field green built up, you can just pull that through. Yes, it is time for the shoddy shop. I'm starting to get a little raspy. Yeah, and I think I was actually going to do that as a little invention, but I'm sure somebody's done it already. If not, they will tomorrow. Hope they do. It'll definitely be, for people that have worms, it'll help out a lot. But yeah, just take your bottle brush and blow that twine through all the way through and tie it to each end of the bottle brush and just pull that brush all the way through your worm and use that brush to help scrub, right? Yes, it does, man. It's one of my favorites too, mash bro. It definitely makes a really good wine. It's expensive. Cherries aren't cheap. Probably one of the more expensive fruits I've done. Uh, but it's probably one of the better wines, and it ages well. Not like a grape. It's not going to be a good 30-year wine probably, but it's not as bad as like a plum. My plums don't, that plum wine didn't age real well, and there's a lot of other fruits like a watermelon wine. That's not going to age well at all. You probably won't drink it right off the bat. I'm not a real big fan of watermelon anything. After I tried it this time, I think it was a little bit warm, and I probably didn't use the right yeast on it, so um, that it didn't turn out well, and it didn't make a decent brandy either. The wine sucked, and the brandy was just as bad. It was something I'll probably not do again. But there are a lot of good fruits out there to make good wines with. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can instead of a brush like that, or I guess you could, take some of that steel wool, or some of the copper mesh and tie it to that brush as well and pull it through. My luck, it'd get stuck in the middle and it'd be harder than hell to get through. But yeah, right on. Now that's speaking from experience right there. I've done the same thing, my friend. Baking soda, citric acid, steam it. Right on. Yeah, man. Yeah, I've scrubbed many a pot. I've used steel wool a lot, but definitely letting it soak. And I can't remember what I put on it to soak. I tried a bunch of different things. I'm sure I tried dish soap and a lot of other things. I don't know that I tried the baking soda though, but definitely give that a try. But hopefully we don't scorch him because I'm a steeper now, man. I'm not. I don't cook a lot. I'm a steeper. I do a lot of steeping now. Yeah, it is. It's you know if you want to be traditional, and I will say if you do make a lot of brandies, having that copper pot is really nice. But if you deal with a lot of grains and you deal with a lot of neutrals and things like that, it becomes less and less critical. But Yeah, in the cleaning. That's the biggest. That's the only bad thing about copper is the maintenance. Other than that, everything's all plus 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 benefit to it. It heats more evenly. It pulls sulfurs out better. It's easier to make if you want to make or make parts, than try to make something with stainless. Unless you got a welder or brazier, it's not happening, right? But you can. Most people can solder, and which is why a lot of moonshiners used it. It wasn't necessarily to remove sulfurs or, for its wonderful properties and stuff like that. I'm sure those were all big pluses. It's just, it was hard to make a stainless pot like that. That's why if you had sheet metal, they made a submarine out of it, right? Because they didn't have, hillbillies didn't have a bunch of welders and stuff like that laying around and able to do that. Or else they'd have been done that for a living, right? They wouldn't have been making moonshine. But that's why a lot of sheet metal went into making submarine pots, and sometimes it wasn't good sheet metal. It wasn't stainless. It was, galvanized and a lot of other stuff. Man, it was horrible. Yeah, they'd make it out of anything they could, but copper was easy to solder. Right, you get your torch and some old lead solder from back in the days, well, and solder you up a steel pretty easily. Yeah, yeah, I was talking about you where I'm shaking. That's the way to go, and that's the way I am now. I mean, I've had copper pots in the past, and I'm going to have the. And again, I mean, I've got a little TIG welder and stuff, so I might try both ways. But I'm probably going to make some little copper infusers, uh, get dual purpose out of them. Help remove sulfides as I'm infusing flavor. So to kind of get a dual use out of it. Plus, the simplicity of making them is going to be much greater than trying to TIG them together. So I might TIG where the stainless and copper meet, and use some copper wire to TIG that. I got me a little plasma cutter for Christmas, a little cheap plasma cutter, little pretty nice little unit, 60 amp, I guess. Pretty cool. Hadn't had a chance to use it yet, but that'll be pretty nice to cut some kegs and put some ferrules on it. I also got a for Christmas. I got a element, a heating element from Denord, a stainless element, and got me a SCR and some little meter, and I want to try to build me a little box, and I want to try the electric thing, and I'm going to start maybe converting some kegs, over and putting some ferrules on kegs and putting some, 4-inch on the top, a couple twos on the bottom, uh, for elements and drains. So he's gonna do a little hobby stuff in the garage, but I gotta clean the garage out first. Yeah, you got that honey-do list going, huh? Yeah, and it's an art, learning to be able to make those cuts is definitely an art done by. Yeah, now when we talk about this, we're not talking about taking the higher heads, the higher volatiles off right off the top. It's generally the ones that are next to the hearts, and the tails the same, that are next to the hearts, and kind of cheating a little bit on each end of that. Um, and most distillers do that, that when they age, it's not out of a lot of people think that, oh, they're doing that. They're being cheap, they're cutting corners and all that. It's actually not that. It's so they can increase some flavors. And let me find my little chart here that I use. And here we go. There you go. Yeah, this one. So instead of just using the 8 through 14, that makes a great white dog, and it makes a great something that you're going to drink straight out of the tap. Fine, right? But in barrel aging, you want to cheat and get a little bit of 6 and 7 in there, and a little bit of 15, 16 in there, just a touch. You don't want to get over in the 2s and 3s, where you've got a lot of your ethyl acetates and acetones and some of your higher um, zeolites and acetones coming, some of your higher volatiles coming off, and you don't want to cheat too far to where you got a lot of your oils, some of your worst oils. But when you get to 20, that little bit there, you're probably getting into some sweet waters. So a lot of the oils kind of tend to go away and are concentrated in jars 17, 18, 19, 20. I guess if you continue going to where you're just getting through the oils and going back to pretty much distilling water off of it, you can get some sweet water. And but yeah, cheating a little bit to get some of 6 and 7 in there, along with 15, and cheating maybe into 16 with a little of the fusel oils. Uh, Over time, those age well, but it's not going to be a real good blend straight up and as a white dog. So it's something that will take time to mature and esterify and make a good flavor. So, but that started distilling, and that started making the cuts. So that's really, like I said, anybody can mash in, anybody can distill a white dog and make a fairly decent drink, but it takes a lot of time and experimentation and knowledge to learn how to mix those cuts and make those cuts and know what's going to work after it ages, right? So if it's going to take a few years to age or years to age, how many years of experience do you have to have before you know which ones to? Yeah, we're talking. That's why it's really probably if you want to accelerate that, it would be good to have a sitting with somebody that does blending, and not just blending different bourbons together to get a unique taste, but blending cuts to get a good unique flavor to go into the barrel. So um, yeah, and be able to taste those and pick those out. And yeah, not everybody can do that. It takes a lot of experience that I don't even have. I don't have that, and I've not done that enough. I make good cuts, and I can pick out some good esters, and that's why at certain points when the heads are coming off, I'll use smaller jars to catch a lot of those, so I can try to isolate some of that. Absolutely, absolutely. And not only do I do that, Roy, sometimes when I made this grappa, when I'm making something that I want to retain oils, I'll use a deflator or a deflegmator. And after I hit the hearts, I'll turn it on, and that way I'm not compressing heads per se, but I'll run it all the way through. And when I start getting into the tails, I know that I'm compressing tails. I can see it on the drip. I can see the oils, but it's not clouding up. And you'll notice when you do that, your proof will go 120, 110, 160. It just drops right off, man. It just drops really, really quickly. And you've compressed a lot of those tails in there, and that's why it goes to water really quickly. And doing that and aging that will definitely help on some distillates. Now, some it's not gonna be so beneficial. I would say with a bloody butcher, that's probably not something that you want to do, right? But with some of your fruits, yeah, some of those oils will be very beneficial over time. Yeah, I use sweet water. I've got jars and jars of it in there. Absolutely. Yeah, and those help a lot too when you're mixing. Like I was talking, when you're mixing, something with some sugars in it. But it's math, or just use a hydrometer. Either or works. If you've got a given amount of liquor at a given proof, that you can add a proof of especially like if you're using sweet waters, because a lot of people A lot of people think sweet waters are going to be necessarily sweet flavored, and it's not. That's not the case. It's just sweet because it has alcohol still in it, and it also you're having something proof down where you're not going to get a lot of clouding, as much clouding, but at the same time you're maintaining a little bit more proof too, because it's it's still 10-15% alcohol in there. No, sweet water is basically when you run out. When you run, a lot of people will stop their run at about 80, 70, 80, 90 proof. When it starts dropping off and getting heavy into the water and into the tails, right? Like I was showing on the chart there. A lot of people cut it off right there and just dump it. Just dump it. And it's crazy to me because, you know, right there in jar 15 and 16, that's 80 proof, man. That's what you're buying in a jar of alcohol from the store, 80 proof liquor. Now that 80 proof with all those fusel oils isn't going to taste good as a white dog because it's not. Those oils haven't done anything, and it tastes horrible. It tastes not good. But there's a lot of recoverable ethanol in there. There's a lot of good alcohol in that, and it's such a waste for people to throw that away because you're throwing a whole lot of alcohol away. And you can take those tails and add it to your next run and recover a lot of that ethanol. So the next time you add that to it, you'll have jar 8 through, you'll have a lot more jars collected. So it'll go up to 26 and you'll collect 8 through 18, right? And then you'll run into tails then. And you get, if you don't want to really keep doing that a lot when you're doing brandies, but for like corn liquors and sugar washes, you do it, for a lot forever. But with brandies, um, it's not. It's probably not a good idea to rerun a lot of heads and tails because you can get a little bit of methanol build up if you continue to do it because we know in a lot of brandies, a lot of tails, there's still some methanol in there. So, and that's how some people accidentally concentrate it, but it's not something really that we would worry about. But that's what the sweet water is once you get down to like a 10%, um, it's right towards the end of the distillation process. Let me find the picture of the curve and show that. That's why I like using these charts. It's a little easier to see. So let me take the lettering away. So once you get to the point where you see on this chart where it's around 207 degrees Fahrenheit, you're still gonna have about 10% ethanol is what we start out with, right? 10 to 12. So when you get back to that, there's still 10% alcohol in the water. And so that's basically what we started out with distilling, right? And that's crazy that people throw all that extra alcohol away. But when it gets to about 10%, and your temperatures start going up, that's when your sweet water starts tapping. And then it's not a lot of alcohol, but it doesn't have a lot of oils. So if you notice, you can go distill and get down to about 90, 80, 90, and all of a sudden it'll start getting cloudy in the 80s and 70s. It just gets cloudy as you run your tails. But if you keep jarring those out, most often when you get to like in the 20s, I have some jars upstairs I could probably grab and show you. But when you start getting in the 20s, it starts getting clear again. And when you get the 10s, it's a clear jar because it's mostly water and most of your oils have already distilled off. Those fusel oils have distilled off. So then you get what's called the sweet waters, and those really have a lot of flavonoids and flavors in them. So when you proof with it, you're maintaining flavor instead of just adding water and diluting the flavor. So there's still some flavor in that you're maintaining. Not necessarily adding, but you're maintaining it because you're not losing it by diluting with pure water. Man, that 130 proof hits hard. Speaking of proof, I think I can need to proof that down a little bit. You need a little sweet water to that. Whew. Right. Exactly. Yeah, I start mine at about 20, Roy. About 20. It has a little bit less of the oils, but I mean, really, it depends on what you're distilling, and how much fusel oils you got. Some more than others. I've had some in the 40s that start clearing up good for me, and you could use those. Some in the 20s, and it just depends on, especially when you start dealing with fruits. And corns. There's a lot of corn oils to deal with, a lot of fusel oils, and a lot of oils coming from the corn, and some more so than others. And yeah, when we talk about using copper to the copper mesh, make sure that you get 100% copper and not some copper plated steel. If you use copper plated steel, it's going to ruin your run. It's nasty stuff. It will. Oh, it's horrible. So you definitely want to make sure, try it with a magnet and buy it from a reputable person, and make sure it says 100%. Because I got some off Amazon, and it was not. They said, and it wasn't. It was copper plated steel. So be careful, check it, and know, because they'll lie. Yeah, and you definitely don't want to use it. I learned the hard way. Yeah, yeah, I like my stainless. It's so much easier. What's going on, Shanko? Good to see you, brother. And I'm behind. I'm sorry. And for people asking questions, I know RV Shiner got mad last week, and I apologize. I hope you're listening, brother. I can't keep up. That's why Clint and I work as a team. He'll answer most everything short version because he's on the phone trying to, and I'll give you the long winded, and it takes me a while to get to you. So I'm sorry if I don't answer your question off the bat. Wait, and most times just read because oh, that tells me to put it back up here. So a lot of people can't read cross platform. So if you read over here in the screen instead of the comment section there, you'll on the actual on the screen. If you're on a PC, it's probably a lot easier to see. But you can see a lot of comments from YouTube if you're on Facebook, and Facebook if you're on YouTube. So I would, brother, but we don't do it on that way on here, man. One of these days I'm going to. I'm going to have some guests on, and I'll definitely keep you in mind, and I'll bring you on. But we try, we don't want to get a bunch of people on here and end up being a shit show and everybody talking over each other, and nobody, being able to understand anybody, and everybody answering questions at the same time. So I changed it up a little bit. So we just try to handle the questions and stuff. But from time to time, we will bring some guests on. I'm going to bring Clint on sometime so we can just have a chatty chat and everybody can get to meet Clint. A lot of people out there haven't had a chance to meet him. So we're definitely going to do that. Maybe a New Year's kind of thing. We'll bring in a New Year's. Everybody, maybe we'll do bring in some old timers and some experienced people like yourself, and do a little New Year's celebration, do something a little different. But then we'll go back to the same old, same old. I like keeping it this way because I've done it with others, and it ends up people get mad because they wanted to answer this one. Well, you answered all the questions. I wanted to answer that one, and when I've done it in the past with others, and there's always a little friction, there, and then when you decide, I think it'd be best if we kind of parted ways, just did our own thing. Then feelings get hurt and friendships are lost, and I don't want to deal with that shit anymore. Mark and I went through that. Roger went through it with Roger and him. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not. We patched it up, but there's still some. You know. Hopefully there's not it, but I don't want to hurt it. Both of us, all of us, were really good friends, best of buddies at one time, and I don't think we're all. Mark and I are close. Roger and I'm not. I don't know. I don't think we're quite as close as we once were, and I don't like that. Roger's a great guy, and I want to maintain him as a good friend, and that's kind of why I did it. I didn't want things to get to the point where it just ruined the friendship, but I guess Didn't ruin it, but yeah, we're not as close as we used to be. And I love Roger to death, and I didn't want that to happen. And this is what I always wanted to do, Q&A and just handle questions instead of, having 10 people on here all at the same time and just talking about anything and everything and politics, religion, and what it is. I just want to stay on topic and answer questions and do it this way because I think that's where what most people want to hear, right? They're here to learn and they don't give a shit what we did this past weekend. I ain't saying it, they don't care, how much you drove this past month and other things. They don't want to hear all that. That's all great and fine and dandy. And I just don't like drama and I don't like dealing with that kind of stuff now. But I did enjoy having guests on to talk about himself. I've had Alan on and a few other people to talk about himself and what they got going on. And I enjoy doing that from time to time. And I may do that other than a Q&A format, just to kind of just sit and chat, more of a talk show type thing. But, for this, I just want to keep it just, bring the questions and we can talk about things and new things, uh, nixting corn. That's something I learned. And I like this format, so we can just sit and ask questions, answer questions, and mostly beginners and intermediate questions because there's no people asking advanced questions because by God they once they do a run or two and they make some liquor. There ain't no more beginners or intermediate, man. They pros and everything. And it's so funny. And it's so many people, man. Once they get that first run or two and they come up with something good, thanks for the help. Don't need you no more. And it's funny. But we're here to help everybody. And I've seen those laser welders. Yeah, a lot of people will talk about, if you want to do a video and have 100,000 hits, like I've said in the past, do a welding video and put it on Facebook or YouTube. And everybody in the world is a welding professional. Now, let me tell you, everybody in the world is welding pro. And you'll get 40, 50, 70,000 armchair welders out there that'll tell you what you're doing wrong. And if you want to get a million hits, do it wrong intentionally. Let it splatter. Don't use enough gas. Overdo it. Poke some holes in it. Let it do it bad, and oh my God, you'll get a million hits in no time. But yeah, I've seen the Chinese, the lasers welders, and they're very interesting. A lot of people, oh, that's not getting good penetration. Yes, it is getting good penetration. Those are excellent welders, expensive, but the cost of them are coming down. And a lot of those videos that they're going, zzz, I think those might be sped up a little bit. I don't think it's quite that fast, but it is pretty quick. And it's I think they're like a pulse laser pulsing, so you don't have to do the movement. It's a pulse, and you don't even see it with the laser because it's just like flashing so fast. But yeah, they're awesome, but they're really expensive. But that's definitely the future. You know, robotic laser welding, definitely the future, bro, for sure. All right, let's see. Hobby been a blast. Awesome. Got your steel symbol. Felt like a 6 shoot at Christmas, man. It's awesome, isn't it? Wait till you do it a few times. You'll do that sugar shine the first time and hopefully pitch it and make it your sacrificial. And then next time you'll do some maybe a thin mash, add some cornmeal and sugar together, and kind of get your feet wet, get a little And there's absolutely nothing wrong with a thin mash. I did that for many, 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 many years, and do that, and then you'll be like, well, damn, this ain't bad. It's a little hot, but damn, it's good. And then next thing you know, you'll be doing all grain conversions and getting real smooth, corn liquor, and you'll be like, wow, I'm a pro now. You'll be a pro in no time, right? But yeah, it's awesome hobby, man. We're glad you're taking the trip with us, man. Glad to have you with us, and we're here for any questions that you got. But yeah, congratulations, got it cleaned up. Hey, ready to rock, man. It's you don't keep it from getting cloudy, Dave. It's going to get cloudy. Sometimes I've done some that never got cloudy the whole way down, and I think with the deflagmator, you compress a lot of tails, so you get those in with the hearts, right? And you mix a lot of those oils. Certain things are better to do that with than others. I don't think the deflator, whatever you call it, is necessarily the best thing to use all the time. But if for brandies, I like it because it adds a lot of those oils from the fruit back in for aging, and I like it. But for Bloody Butcher, like I was talking earlier, I don't think a good corn liquor with a Bloody Butcher would be a good thing to defamate. It's just it'll compress those oily oils, and it's just gonna no, I don't think that would be good. But I've done some that just never got cloudy at all. They just stayed clear the whole way through, man, all the way down. And then I've had a lot that do get cloudy, and then it just depends on the amount of oils that you have and what you're distilling. But it's nothing that you're doing wrong. It's just now we'll say that if you get your worm temps too low, so if the water that you're cooling your worm gets too low and your distillate coming off starts to get 40, 50 degrees, then you're going to run into clouding a little sooner, right? And we've talked about that. And you're basically just you're some of the oils in it that would have been more volatile and combined kind of drop out of solution, and it starts clouding up on you. A lot of freeze filtering creates a lot of that when a lot of I don't know if you've noticed a lot of some liquors do a freeze filtering process, and a lot of your bourbon drinkers, your sophistos, they don't like that. They like, no, I don't want cold filter anything. I want those flavors, and for aging you do, but it's nothing wrong. Well, yeah, now if you do some grains, it'll smell good, but sometimes, man, like my watermelon, who it didn't smell real good, and so sometimes they smell good, sometimes they don't. Put airlocks on it, and you can put like vodka in the airlocks, and that kind of helps keep the smell down a little bit, uh, and it'll help clean up some of the odors that get through. So that's one way to do it. Put airlocks on and get like 5 gallon, those little 5 gallon water or a barrel. You can have it going through a hose going into a 2 liter jug, just the same, bubbler going into a 2 liter, and just put some heads in there, and it'll smell like acetone or something. And you just reminder that smells like your nail polish remover. I have to smell every morning in the bathroom or whatever. And oh, okay, yeah. So, so then that'll work. Right. And alcohol will keep these oils hidden because it's a solvent, right? It's a solvent. Alcohol is a solvent. And those oils are in there, but they're invisible because the alcohol is keeping them insolvent. So once you proof it down to a certain point, the alcohol is no longer able to be a strong solvent, and it becomes insolvent, and those oils start dropping out of the solution. They've always been there, but now they're visible because they're not being solvented into the solution, right? Like it's kind of like salt. You can take some salt and put it in water and shake it up and dissolve it, and oh, it disappeared, right? No, it's still in there, and as it evaporates off, the sugars will start dropping out. I mean, the salt will start dropping out of it. So it's the same thing. It's you don't see it, but it's still there. And once you start proofing it down to a certain point, the alcohol loses its solvency, and it becomes insolvent, and those oils start showing up, and then they get cloudy. But that's what's happening. Hell no, man. We love it, brother. That's what we're here for. Bring all your questions here. If you got it, I mean, if you're just getting stoned and random thoughts, we love it. I don't care, you know. Yeah, throw something out. Let's not get back like we did last week, though. And I shouldn't have mentioned that, because next thing you know, we'll be talking about that again. But yeah, we love the questions, man. Right, exactly, Richard. And people don't understand that. Making a cup for a white dog is hearts to hearts. That's it, hearts only. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people prefer our white dog over Buffalo Trace white dog, because Buffalo Trace white dog is what they would put in the barrel. So it's got a little bit of heads, a little bit of tails, and that's why people are like, oh, that's not as good as mine. No, because that's what they're getting ready to put in the barrel, and they just sell it off as that, because there's a little bit of a market for it, and they can, anything they can sell without having to put in that barrel, they'll be all over it, because that takes time and money and real estate, and it's an expensive process. That's why it costs a lot of money to buy brandies or bourbons and whiskeys that's been aged, because it's a costly, to produce like that. And I noticed I posted earlier in the groups about a distillery closing one. I think it's Claremont, closing down uh, closing down their distillery. Now they're not shutting the distillery down. So let me here. I got a couple of need to post a couple more here. Just a second. I didn't get a chance to earlier. And man, those are queued up and ready. That's awesome. Can't believe it. Let's see. Oh, things didn't get taken care of. I guess I have to do it myself then. Yep. All right, let's see. Where was that? Oh, yeah. I'm going to check out that article. I posted it in the militia. And let's see. Got a lot of comments on it. A lot of people are like, oh, well, actually, I posted an article, and I probably shouldn't have posted it from LEX 18 News, because they blamed it on tariffs, and tariffs had absolutely nothing to do with them closing at all. It had more to do. Let's see. And it was Jim Beam. I remember. It had to do with waning demand for bourbon and whiskey and in the market in general. And nationwide, there's been a downward trend. And somebody said, well, Canada is the biggest consumer of American whiskey, and no, not even close. They're like fifth. Japan and Europe, first and second, teeters back and forth. Germany, Australia, and I think Australia and Canada are about the same, coming in at sixth and seventh. So maybe a little bit to do with it with Canada, but generally there's been like a 10% decline in demand for bourbon, and it's because less people are drinking, and people are drinking different things. So they halted production for 1 year. They're retooling. They're doing some repairs and retooling. That wasn't the reason for the shutdown. The reason for the shutdown was because of waning demand for just regular whiskey and increased demand for a higher end stuff. So they're retooling. They're going to do more higher end stuff and taking advantage of it and cutting back a year. And it's just an economic thing. It didn't have anything to do with tariffs. That was, I shouldn't have used Channel 18 News for that, because that's they had to make it something woke, and had to somehow bash Trump and all that. So they never miss an opportunity to do that. you know but yeah, it's but yeah, they're cutting back. So that's there's different demands. Things are changing in the markets. I don't know how I got there from here, Richard, but yeah, talking about the white dogs and stuff, and how their white dog is nowhere near as good as ours, because we do tight heart cuts, right? And for a white dog, that's the way you have to do it. And for a good corn liquor straight up, that's the way you have to do it. But if you're barrel aging, you want to cheat a little bit on each side, and it'll add some sophistication to your aged distillate. But you have to age it. You can't do that and then not age it over time. So if you're doing it with staves or with spirals, or with a small barrel that's only going to do for a short period of time, then don't cheat too much, because you're not going to have enough time. Because it's what it takes is time, not just the barrel, it's the time involved for the chemical processes to take place. No, if you've got a distillate coming out blue, don't drink it. Don't try to redistill it. It's toxic and it's not good for you at all, and it's not worth the risk. Um, which is why some people, if you don't want to do the maintenance, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do the copper. Uh, the copper mesh is so easy to take out, clean, reuse, take out, clean, reuse, and once it gets all green and corroded, pitch, start a new one. And it's cheap to do. That copper roll is not real expensive. Get more expensive, I guess, as copper does, because it is copper and 100% pure. But it's just a lot easier. So, but it's not necessarily better, but it is much easier. And no, if it comes out blue, don't try to rerun it and get that blue out, because you can clean it up and take the blue out, but a lot of the toxicity is still in there. Um, and it's just not something, you can use it for cleaning your steel. You can save it for that, because it's got a good lot of alcohol in there, so you can use it to pour through. But just make sure after you use it for cleaning that you follow up with a good rinse, and rinse it all out, right? So if you want to run it through your steel to clean your steel, and just run that blue through, and then rinse it really well with water, then and steam it out, you can do that and save it for that if you don't just want to pitch it. But otherwise, never drink it. Yeah, and it's something that you want to do if you have time, not necessarily just the wood, but the time involved, because it takes a lot of time for these chemical processes to complete. It's not something that just happens overnight. That's a fact. Yep, it does. Sure does. And it allows the alcohol to balance as you do it. Sure does. And doing it at room temperature and at the same temperature as the alcohol seems to help too. And if you do, this is a little trick. If you do get to where you're cloudy, um, put it in the microwave just for a minute and warm it up, and you'll notice it'll get clear again. As you heat those oils up a little bit, they'll go away. But don't blow, don't blow up the microwave doing too much. Don't get it real hot where you're going to get a lot of evaporation. Just small jars, a little bit at a time. But it's an interesting experiment. Yeah, I wouldn't rerun anything, even if it was blue and green, rerunning it and then getting, even if it comes out clear the next time, I would never drink that. Use it to clean with, and keep you a, a barrel or um, a bucket and label it, cleaning solution only, and use that to run through, distill, and condense and clean your still out. After, if you do a vinegar run, then you could run that through and clean out, but make sure that you 100% rinse it real well after you do that. Yeah, it's all experimenting and learning as you go, and there's little shortcuts that you'll learn to make and things to make it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut down a little bit. It's at 1:30. It hits pretty hard. Oh, I got it back up right now. I'm just that far behind. Oh, yeah, I'm getting behind 15 minutes. Yeah, if I don't have an answer for you, I'll say I don't know, but we'll look. Hell, I ain't too proud to get on there and Google something. I'll check it out. Yeah, I mean, some people get on there. Oh, you Google it? No, I don't Google all my answers. There's certain things that I'll Google. Like nixted. That's something that's new to me. If it's something new, then I'll Google it. If it's a complex question that I can partially answer, but I'm having trouble fully explaining it, and maybe I'm leaving some context out, I'll pull it up. And if it's something I don't know about, I'll say I don't know. Let's look. Let's check it out. We'll learn together. Yeah, I ain't too proud for that. I definitely don't have all the answers. So, I'm not that guy. I don't know that there is a guy out there. I do know that there's certain people out there that can answer most of them. There's a few that are brilliant. Alan Bishop knows a hell of a lot. There's a trying to think of the guy's name over there at Firm Solutions. Some nights I can come up with his name, other nights I can't. My mind's slipping. I'm having to re-educate myself on a lot of things. But he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people, on the craft and that there is actually. You know. Oh, Miss April, how are you? Yeah, I don't do the drama very well. Hope you had a good Christmas, April. Yeah, yeah, we talked quite a bit about that last week. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you know lot where those paths cross distillation with that, and that's definitely a future trend. We talked a little bit about vacuum distillation, and that's definitely going to be a big thing with when you distill with cannabis to maintain a lot of those flavonoids and cannabinoids and all those, and retain a lot of flavor, because when a lot of things when they get to a certain temperature, it breaks a lot of the flavors down, right? So gin making and making some of the green giant and maintaining a lot of uh, the flavors from the marijuana into the distillate. If you do it in the vacuum, much lower temperature, you can retain a lot of those flavors and a lot of the oils that would otherwise be lost. So yeah, it's a great future. Yeah, I'm not great either. Especially the TIG. I'm better at TIGging than MIG. The MIG it's splattery and nasty, and MIG welding's nasty. Stick welding's kind of nasty, but TIGging is it's a lot cleaner. Using more gas too. Yeah, I mean, I'm not knocking it. There's a time and place for everything, and it's great for what it is. I enjoy watching it, and sometimes getting on there. Unless there's a lot of drama, I'm not going to knock a lot of people, but I don't know the Scott dude that got on there last night. I was going to jump on there last night, but the Scott dude started getting in there and talking about KKK and some other, and I'm like, why? No, I'm not getting on tonight. Oop, oop, oop. And it got a little, yeah. I think Damon cut him off at about the right time. It was getting a little bit much for me. I was like, no, not gonna be part of that, not tonight. So that's I cuddled up with Ann. I turned it off, went over and snuggled up with Ann, and like, yeah, I won't be on there tonight. Nothing against the guy, and if that's the way you want to believe, you can believe that way. But yeah, he was quite the character, though, quite the character. And a lot about Scott history, and a lot about the old, Scott history. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, we start bringing in the KKK and racism and all that. I was kind of okay. I've had enough. I'm done now. Yeah, there's always something that'll humble you, like some watermelon. That was kind of humbling for me. I had high hopes for my watermelon wine and shine, and it was horrible, and it was too warm, and I didn't use probably the right yeast for it, and it fermented really quickly and at a warm temperature and with the wrong yeast, and it wasn't good, So we all make mistakes. We all make that. There's always that one. That's why sometimes my wines, some of my wines don't necessarily turn out well. Sometimes there's, some stresses that I couldn't avoid, and sometimes it's just not that great a wine, and it makes a decent brandy. So you can take some not so good wines and make some good brandies out of them, especially if you got an infuser. That's why I'm gonna build me some infusers. Those work pretty well. My inline infuser worked okay, but it just didn't have the volume. Being inline, kind of like a bong process where everything filters through it, but it was just that 2-inch tubing, and it just didn't have the volume needed to really get that good flavor exchange. So change things up. What's going on, Jeff? Good to see you, brother. Happy New Year to my friend. Hope to see you soon. We'll have to come up and we'll have to hit a few of the distilleries. A lot of good collectible bourbons going up right now. They're putting a lot out. I guess a little bit of the waning demand I was talking about earlier. There's not much waning demand for some of that top shelf stuff, for that BTAC, Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, and some of that higher end stuff. It's just as strong a market as ever for that stuff. And I think that might be why Beam is kind of retooling for, is to come out with some more premium stuff that really they can do less of and make more on, but they're not going to do it with their white label. So they're gonna retool, and that's why they're kind of taking a break and cutting production because of the demand, and at the same time retooling and going to step up, ramp up some higher end product, which I look forward to trying. Yeah, yeah, we all get humbled. I mean, that watermelon definitely humbled me. It was horrible. Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier. I want to talk about a little bit canning and off the grid living, and because a lot of the foods, good fermented foods, are awesome, man. Uh, so and there's a lot more fermented food than you realize, and good stuff. Yeah, cuts are tough, on the 3.5 gallons and like air steels. On the smaller steels, the cuts are tougher. And again, like I was talking about using the smaller jars to make the cuts even smaller. On a 3.5, you'd have to use shot glasses, right, or some little teeny tiny, jar, because it's going to be a smaller percentage, right? And as you produce more and larger, as your steels get larger, it's a lot easier to make the cuts. The margin of error is a lot less. So it has to be really tight when you have a small steel like that. So learning small is a benefit as far as learning to make cuts for sure, but you're never going to really learn to make that ester cut, and taste that headsy in the right in the middle towards the end of the heads where you get that interesting ester flavor, that sweet ester. It's going to be really tough to isolate that on a small steel. And the larger the steel gets, the larger that little bit is, and it's a lot easier to capture. That's just part of the magic, man. And you'll as your hobby progresses, you'll either say I'm done. It's just. But I will say that having a small steel makes it's a lot more work because you just don't get as much product and mashing in. It's almost just as hard to mash in 5 gallons as it is 40. It just takes a little more product and a little more time. But while you're doing it, you got all your tools out, you've got your grinder, you've got you drill out with a mixer, you get boiling water. It takes a little bit more time, of course, definitely in a larger vessel to boil the water in. And that's usually the hang up people have is graduating up to larger amounts is you have to have something large enough to boil that water in for steeping and for cooking, so but you can cook smaller batches and steep smaller batches and dump them all, let them ferment together. You can doesn't have to be all done steeped at the same time in the same vessel. You can steep, 1 10-gallon batch here, start this one boiling up, steeping, and have it done yesterday. This one I did today. This one I do tomorrow. Combine them all later. It all works out just fine. But distilling with a larger steel, it's more rewarding. You get more product. It's easier to make your cuts, and it's not so much work. It's less work. And time wise, you know, 3.5 gallons, 5 gallons, takes about 3 or 4 hours to run it all the way, get through your hearts. And 18 gallons, it's the same. 50 gallons, it's about the same as long as everything is sized up proportionately. It takes about the same amount of time. So, it's like in 4 or 5 hours, do you want 3 or 4 gallons or do you want a quart? And it's so, and you'll use those 3.5 gallon, that little 3.5 gallon of every steel will become your thumper for your next steel. Yep. I'm gonna have to check it out. Email me that Facebook group you was talking about. So they talk about these things and what's going out and when it comes out. And a lot of these distilleries, they'll offer stuff that you can't buy on the shelves, right? So you have to either go in and get it, or you have to go into a liquor store and they put it in the back, and you have to pay more for it because it's allocated. They get that allocation. They're like, nope, I'm not selling this on the shelf for $127. I'm putting it in the back, and I'm going to sell it for $300. And those people that come in and buy it for 300 sell it on a secondary market for $700 or $800, and it just keeps going up. So there's a big market out there for a lot of these unique high end bottles. It's crazy. It's we were talking about one just before we went on the podcast, and there's one that's right now $2,700. Yeah, think about that. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, he needs to ramp up some production of that aged tequila. That's I don't know if you've all heard me talk about my tequila buddy, but that man right there can make some of the finest tequila you ever put your lips to. Now he makes good buddy butcher weeded sour mash whiskey, a lot of other good stuff. But I'm telling you, that tequila is probably the best tequila I've ever drank. And I used to drink a lot of tequila. So I figured he'd be working in a distillery right now. I don't know how that worked out. I know they were talking to him. You still working it out? Yeah, it's a lot easier when you're on a big one. Sure is, brother. 100 gallon, that's a biggie. My biggest was 80. I've got a couple of 80s. I don't use those much anymore. I don't use those anymore. Yeah, I'm slacking it. Yeah, it's a good week killer. Man, I'm in behind. What about 15 minutes behind? Shit. Awesome. I love to hear that, man. That's some now this is some barrel aged stuff. So this is gonna be interesting. Yeah, his way behind, but his uh his tequila is the best I've ever drank. The aged tequila, the white was good, but the aged was just. And I've drank a lot of tequila back in my days. I went through a tequila stage. I've had some top shelf tequilas. Ain't nobody out there turn that in tequila better than that man out there can make that aged tequila. I'm telling you, man, it's gold, bro. You need to get your license and start putting that on the market for sure. Firm Solutions, not time to think of his name. Shit, it was right on the tip of my tongue. Heist. That's his name. What's his name? Heist. That's his. Damn, got it. I'm giggling, man. I can't stand it. This is what happens when you start getting old, and getting dementia, and start losing your mind. Patrick. I didn't even have to type it. See, I knew it'd come to me. Patrick Heist. Brilliant, brilliant man. Probably the most knowledgeable person in distilling. Oh, did he talk about Nextmalized? Okay. Well, that's for. I guess somebody brought it up earlier. I can't remember who, but Alan jumped in and was talking about it as well. He's not done it yet, so I definitely. It sounds really interesting though. Definitely, and I learned something tonight. See, that's why I love this show. We're all learning and teaching, and it's awesome. Love it for that. Not at all, brother. I don't mind at all. And like I said, Patrick Heiss and Alan. There's a lot of people out there, with a lot more knowledge than me, but they're not they're retired, right? They have families and they're not retired. They can't dedicate the time to do this because they've got a business to run, they've got a family, and all that, and they're not able to dedicate the time to it. I know Alan would love to be able to just sit and ramble like I do for hours on end, but he's just too busy. He's got a little girl, and he's got a family, and he's got a distillery, and he's got so much going on, and he's got his almanac and his own podcast, and he does some question answering too. So definitely tune into his stuff. He answers some questions, from some of the stuff when he posts. People will email questions, and he'll field a few questions every once in a while and do a video on that. So, but I know he'd love to be able to just sit and ramble for hours like I do and answer and stuff, but he's just not able to do that. I wish he would. I'd, bring him on here, me, him, and Clint, man, we'd just tear it up, wouldn't we? Watermelon is definitely not easy to ferment, man. That shit, and especially in warm, it got a little bit warm. I will give you some clues. Use wine yeast and not distiller's yeast. Do a cooler fermentation, and do it a much slower. Oh, over a little bit longer period of time. Probably turn out a little bit better, and never. No, you think using the rind helps? I was told that gives it a melony taste and not to. So maybe that made it better. I don't know. I definitely used no rind though. There was no white at all. I trimmed it. I just trimmed pure, just red, no seeds, no rind at all. So maybe that was where I messed up. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Rub it in. Everybody at Farm to Bottle, except maybe a couple. There's a couple at that competition. These watermelons just tasted just like mine. It wasn't good, and there was one that was horrible, and it wasn't mine. Thank God. But yeah, there was I would say out of the 10, there's probably 6 or 7 that just like mine. It just wasn't anything to write home about. There was a few that was pretty decent. They turned out pretty good stuff. Maybe they cooled it. Maybe they had rind. Maybe they did a little cooler. Maybe a better yeast. It's something I'm not going to experiment with. It just, yeah, not worth the time. Even the good wasn't all that great. So it's just, yeah, they do. And a lot of people argue that tariff, and all these woke news stations like 18 MSNBC. No, it wasn't the tariffs at all. It was oversupply and waning demand. And they need to retool for a higher end product because they've got shitloads of barrels of white label that's not jumping off the shelves at the moment. So it was an economic decision and a wise one, I guess. Yep. Root beer shine. Well, my root beer is started out as a banana rum. Okay, so I made this banana rum and it was good. It was a good rum, but it wasn't banana-y tasting at all. So it was used dark brown sugar, and so it had that dark brown, that dark rummy flavor with the banana. It just made a grungy flavor that I don't know. Some people might say it wasn't that great, but I liked it. But it just had the front end was grunge, the middle was grunge, and it trailed off as grunge. It was just had that grunge to it. And somebody said, well, it might be interesting if you infused peanut butter. So use the powdered peanut butter and redistill and infuse with powdered peanut butter and have that grunge and the peanut butter complement each other, and it would be good. And I was going to do that. And somebody said, well, you got to be careful with that powdered peanut. It'll get makeshift bitter, and you'll ruin a good run. If it's decent, I might not want to do that if it's the first time. And like, well, this is a pretty good rum, and it has a good unique flavor to it. So, and then I started thinking, I think Mark, Uncle Moonshine, Mark Morgan, was making some root beer at the time, and just came out with some root beer, and I'm like, I'll try that too. I'm like, this would probably pair well with root beer because that dark grunge with that root beer will be great. So I infused, I reran it, proofed it down, reran it with the root beer and flavoring in the infuser, and then came out with a root beer that I also posted with a root beer flavor. And oh man, proofed it to 100, and it's a looks like a barrel aged as far as color wise. It looks like it's a whiskey color, bourbon color, and it's infused with root beer, and really good. It's real good. Makes real good shine. It's and it that banana brandy grunge coupled with the root beer flavoring. Uh, Pops. It works really well together, and it gives it so much depth because it starts out with a little sweetness, and then you get the grunge, and then it follows up with just pure root beer, and that root beer will sit on your tongue for a long time, and it's pretty good, And as far as root beer, goes, everybody that's tried it, so it's some of the best root beer shine because a lot of people are doing the root beer shine now, and it's a good shine. It makes a good shine if you like root beer. Now, some people don't like root beer, and they probably would hate it. So. Yeah, you tried it. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's post. It's infused and post. So it's gotten infused with some of the things that go into making root beer, and then post flavored with root beer flavoring. So, but yeah, it's awesome. Anal steels. I was wondering what kind of anal steel we're talking about there, man. Those. Like I was saying, then Clint, bless his heart, man. I mean, he's got that phone. He's answering these questions quick on the phone, man. He's a master. Uh, that's why he can't do long-winded answers like me. His phone won't even type that many characters, or he would. He would. He'd be as long-winded as I am. Sassafras, yes, sir. Bark. It's actually an infused. Technically, you don't use the saffron or the sassafras bark anymore because of a chemical in it called safrole. If you want to Google that, it's a toxin that creates cancers and it's really bad on the bod and on the liver, which is why they outlawed sassafras tea and stuff. You know, a lot of people used to drink sassafras tea, which we used to drink as a diuretic and as a remedy, home remedy, but they outlaw using sassafras. I can't remember what year that was, but it's been quite a while now, and so they don't allow you to use the sassafras anymore. And I don't use sassafras, but it's something that's used in candy making that I use. Man, that's awesome, brother. That's where I want to be. I'm gonna get me a big barrel. I've got two 15s, so I'm gonna have a 15 full of brandy, a 15 full of my grain, multi-grain, and then I've got some smaller 1 gallons, and I've got a 5 gallon that I'm gonna do as well. But my big dream is to fill up a 53, and that'll be a sad day because after I do that, I'll probably take that hat off and hang it up and just sippy sip off that 53 until they dig a hole for me. I don't know. I say that, and then I want some damn brandy or something different. And I'll still want something different, even if I do have 53 gallons of great bourbon. I always want something a little different. Yeah, the bark and the roots, but don't do it. It's got saffron in it, and it's dangerous. So just use the root beer flavorings. You can buy them online, and those are much safer to use. Sour mashing, I tell you what, Bloody Butcher is not a great corn the first time around. Some people like it, but most tend to think it's a little bit on the too oily. But sour mashed, it after it gets rid of those oils right on the first go around, it does quite well. So it's interesting. You did use the rind. All right, all right. I do too. I'd have just put my name on it out of one. Yeah, I didn't. I intentionally cut every bit of the rind out. Somebody told me that it made it taste like honeydew melon and not watermelon. So I didn't. Yeah, you want to be real careful about sassafras. Read about saffrole. I think it's spelled Saffrole or saffrole. Yeah, read about that. It's that's why they don't use sassafras in root beer making anymore. They have a different process. In Canada, they were like the sixth, consumer. So I think there's like a 10% worldwide reduction in bourbon demand and whiskey demand, and I think that had about as much to do as anything. The tariffs with Canada and all that. Beam. I don't know what market share, but out of all the whiskeys, it's like every whiskey to Canada has been tariffed. So, and they're refusing to buy. So I don't think it really impacted Beam that much. But I think just the worldwide decrease in demand and the fact that they probably overproduced in the last 20 years because they really geared up because bourbon was getting more and more and more and more popular in the last 20 years, and over the last 20 years they've made the shit out of it. Now they're finding out that tastes are changing. Also, Japan is coming in the market with a lot of whiskeys and bourbons, and getting a little bit of their market share with their offerings, and that's not helping either. But yeah, just a little bit of a decrease. People are drinking different things, and people are drinking less. I look forward to trying it. Yeah, and it just wasn't that huge a demand. They're like the sixth. Oh yeah, Roy makes good liquor. Yeah, yeah, it is a shame, especially when they turned around and drank somebody else's jar and never said a word. I know, brother. I didn't like that either. But what can I say? People are gonna be the way they want to be. I, what my thoughts are, if anybody's gonna get in trouble, it'd been you, right? If they'd seen that jar, I don't think they would, shut down the whole show because one person had a jar. They'd probably made you dump it or taken you in for the day or something, right? But yeah. But I got a sippy sip. I've had some of your Roy Shine. He makes damn good liquor. So does April, who was on here earlier. Telling you, man, we got a lot of people in the family, man, make really good stuff. A lot of good stuff coming out of, and it's we've learned a lot from each other, and there's a big passion for it in the family, and it's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you, brother. Yeah, man, they ramped up production over the last 2 decades. They really kind of put themselves in that position. Actually, they thought demand would keep increasing, and it's leveled off, and that coupled with maybe a touch to do with the tariffs, maybe 5% influence out of the 100, but you know, other producers, a lot of craft distilling, uh, Japan coming in the market, less demand for it worldwide because of the change in taste. So all that adds up to them just like, wait, let's just do something different. It was an economic decision more so than anything. And back get caught up a little bit. Yeah, yeah, they try to speed it up, but that just changes the penetration into the wood and getting the tannins out. But really, there is absolutely nothing that can replicate time for those chemical reactions aren't because of heat and cooling, right? These chemical reactions between the acids and the oils just take time. I mean, this is happening a molecule at a time, and electrons are being given up and taken, and all these molecules are changing, from one substance to another. So, and it takes a long time for all these molecules and everything to make that change. It doesn't, nothing can make it happen quick, right? And so it just takes time. Time, nothing can replace the time. Everybody's tried different things and putting it on Ferris wheels and putting it on houseboats. We've seen them on the show doing it, and that helps, agitation in the barrel. But that's more helping the barrel part out more so than the aging part. So you can accelerate, like you're talking about. You can accelerate the tannins going in, but if you want to, you can just get buy tannins and dump them in there. We use tannins in the wine industry. It's you can buy it basically. They leach them out. They with water, and they put it over an evaporation tray, and all the water evaporates off, and it leaves behind this fine dust, and it's not sawdust, and it's just it's tannins that have dried, and they they scrape it up, and you buy bags of it for winemaking. It's bitter as shit, but it's used in winemaking. Um, so you could use a little bit of that if you just want the bitter tannins, and but you're not going to get that smoky char right without the barrels. So it's best to use the barrels, and the staves. It works well. It makes a good mock whiskey. It's not a top shelf. It's not going to knock your socks off, but it's going to take your white dog and transform it into something that's a little different and has some smoky, tanniny wood flavor that I love. But it's just not going to make that top shelf bourbon that really has all those interesting notes that only time in a barrel can give you. Yeah, it has a lot of people. 26, awesome. Yeah, I might make you a little visit next time I'm down. Ann's daughter, Ann's got a house down there, or Miss Santa has a house down there that she rents, and her daughter's down there and married, and so we go down and visit every once in a while. I have to pay you, drive up and pay you a little visit. Yeah, it's a neurotoxin. Yeah, the saffron. Yeah, it's not good. Yep. I'm telling you, that old Yeller Dent makes a damn good corn liquor too. And you take it, put some cream corn in your infuser with some good yellow dent, make it about as good a corn liquor as you can. I tell you, old Toby makes damn good corn liquor. Yeah, old Yeller Dent. Reinhardt. All right. I wonder where you're going with that. Like, okay. Maybe that sounds like a good name for a watermelon wine. Reinhardt. What do you think? You allergic to melon? I wonder what it's in it that you're allergic to. Yeah, Roy makes damn good liquor. Yeah, women like a good liquor, don't they? I'm not gonna say a thing. We got ladies watching this. Chris, I know what you're saying, buddy. Yeah, I'm damn glad you do, brother. Yeah, panty. I'm not even gonna go. No, I'm not. There's claws back there. They sure do. They certainly do make good. And flake corn, makes good, and it's already gelatinized, so you don't have to cook it. You can just convert it, get up to temp, depending on what kind of amylase you're using or malts. And flake makes real good liquor too. Yep, that's about the right size. You want a good coarse grind. Some of the cracks not cracked enough, and you don't want a flour. So it's somewhere in between, and that's a good consistency. Yeah, I don't tell them all, but I do. I do give some out. Like using that cream corn in your infuser, man, that'll make your corn liquor so much better. It's awesome. And you can use, you can make your own cream corn. You can just take good sweet corn and use an immersion blender and blend it up real good. And yeah, I hope to, man. Yeah, if you get tough flour though, it converts real well, but it's tough to clear, and but it works. I've used cornmeal for long, many years. Oh, all right. I think I'm gonna have me a drinky drink. It's about 10:40, almost 11. I think it's about. I think we've answered most of the questions we got tonight. Yeah, you don't want it too small. Yeah, it's you don't want a flour. Oh yeah, but I would recommend if you can blend it up, put in a blender, and that way you don't get anything puking into you. I don't know what size of worm you got coming off there, but you don't want kernels puking up into the worm if it gets too hot in there or it gets too full. But yeah, yeah, cream corn or cream some sweet corn, put it in there. Absolutely, man, it adds good flavor to your corn liquor. Speranza, yeah, man, gotta go. Skirt nose, yeah. Speranza's calling. So is Miss Claus. So I think I'll go to Spermanza, then Spernanza. I didn't say that. No. Yeah, you definitely want a good grind. You don't want too fine, and you don't want like some of the cracked corn I've seen. There's whole kernels in there that's doing nothing. You're not so you got to break them all up and make sure that it's a good. Now they say if you take a kernel and break it into 6 to 8 pieces, that'd be about perfect. But of course, when you're grinding it like that, it's hard, but having a good grain mill, it means a lot, and running it through, once and getting a good coarse grind. And then if you want a little finer, just real small, adjust that dial a little bit, run it through a second time. Works real well. Much better than what I used to do with so much better having a grain mill than trying to use an old blender and food processors like I used to have to, or get it cracked, and just have to, re-crack the cracked corn. Sounds good, brother. I look forward to trying that. Put it in the barrel till Maggie. We'll sit and drink, talk about it. Yes, it does, man. It certainly flies. That's right. You got to be careful because unless you have a sight glass in your thumper, sometimes it gets filled up and then, it's bubbling and spitting and little chunks are getting thrown up and, one of it hits the line and goes in and you get a couple build up and next thing you've got pressure and that you didn't know about. You're sitting there making cuts about 2 sheets to the wind and it can cause an explosion. So you definitely want to, anything you put into your infuser or your thumper, always make sure that you blend it up really like it, make a good slurry out of it, right? You don't want chunks of anything. That way if something does happen, you don't worry about it. And it drains better. If you got a drain that you open up ball valves and stuff, if you got big particles in there, it clogs that, doesn't want to drain well. And then you got infusing stuff, you're trying to get it out and have to wait until it gets real watery before you can dump it, and you're not getting a good concentrate infusion. So it's best to, I got, an immersion blender now that I use. They're pretty cool. But blender, you can use a Ninja or a regular blender or anything like that. What's going on, brother? Hope you had a good Christmas, my friend. Yeah, it does increase your black increase, and it gives you a non-clear path to the worm. So you have to open up that cap anytime you add that thumper to it. You should anyway. But when you add that thumper, you put vacuum in the lines, right? And you don't have open air from the cap through the worm out where there's movement, where air can move. And when things get cooler, yeah, it can cause you still to implode. So always, especially when you should always have a valve of something that you can open on there. I wouldn't trust the vacuum valves, a $3 vacuum valve from China on a $2,000 copper steel. Never trust that. Put your half-inch valve on there, or 3/4 inch valve on your cap. When you're done running, open that thing up. That'll, or lift it up, or if you want to get you some grill gloves on and loosen that tri clamp and lift it up off that and break that seal. That works well too. Any of that works fine. But if you just have a simple little half-inch, 3/4 inch ball valve, with a little rubber handle on it so you don't burn because it gets hot. But put that on there and open it up every time. That'll definitely, keep you from imploding the steel. I've seen some nice steels, sunk in like a can squeezed. Um, the difference is certain corns have higher levels of starches. So they're not like sweet corn where it has just a natural sweetness, like you just eat it right off the cob. It's designed more for starches for animals, right? Because they have these chambered stomachs that can break these starches down and they get the sugars out of it through natural enzymes like what we use, right? To break down the complex starches into more simple sugars, and their stomachs do that, right? And so having a high starch corn allows that animal to break it down inside its gut and get the sugars and things that it needs to for the muscles, for energy and things like that. It's all physiological. So different corns, you will have a different, different properties. Now, sweet corn, you probably use less amylase on that if you needed any, because it's mostly sweet to begin with. But I'm sure a little bit of amylase would help versus a real starchy corn. You have to have it. You have to convert that. So lots of interesting differences in corns. But yeah, yeah. That's what that there's a lot of heirloom corns out there that are expensive. They're expensive, and some people find it, that it's worth it, to use these exotic heirlooms and get it unique flavors from them, like Ohio Blue, unique sweetness, and Bloody Butcher, unique oiliness, and Jimmy Red, and mixing them together to get, a little bit of profile of each of them. It's a lot of fun to experiment with that and get some of those unique flavors from each into, a shine. So yeah. Yeah, I would. I wouldn't even trust PBR. I just put a valve on there. Just put your valve and having a PRV, in case you forget to throw the switch. But having that on there in case the PRV fails or something, definitely. Yeah. Good seeing you, Richard. Hope you and Charlene have a good Christmas, brother. You do the same. Yeah, it does. It comes early, my friend. It depends on what you're doing. There's running low and slow. Is okay up to a point, but I've had some people really take it to an extreme. They're like, I've been distilling this for 12 hours now. How much longer is it going to take? And they're just like drip, drip, and they were just going so slowly, and that's just crazy. And then at the other end of it, they've got it cranked up so high, they're spitting water and shine out, and it's coming out at 70 proof because there's so much water coming off with it, and it's just, proofing it down at the same time. So there's a happy medium in between. So, you want a good little drizzle that depend on the steel size, so the larger the steel you have, the faster your stream can be, and you can still maintain that integrity. Whereas, with a small stream, some with a small steel, it has to be a drip, right? 5 gallons or so, it's going to be a drip, 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 drip. Whereas you get to, 10, 20, it's going to be just as fine a stream as you can get, or just as fast a drip as you can get, or right at that little in between. Or, with bigger steels, I mean, hell, some of the steels bigger, it'll be like a garden hose coming out, and some of the big steels at some of these places, man, it's just unbelievable. It's like you opened up the faucet. So it all depends on the steel and what you're running. If it's a stripping run, you can run a little quicker. If you're just running tails out to get the liquor off the tails, you can run that quicker. So it also depends on if you're stripping or if you're doing a hearts run, or exactly what, and what you're distilling. So um, I hate that answer, that it depends answer, but different methods call for different. Like if a stripping run, you'll definitely be running faster. When you get to the tails, you can run it faster. But for like a brandy, or a single pass brandy, you would probably want to run that fairly low and slow, but not so much where you can't. You got to get some of that water carry over, right? If you run it too slow, it's a higher proof and less flavor because you're not getting as much water. And you run it too much and you get too much water, and it's just low proof. So you got to kind of find a happy medium, and it depends on what you're running. But good brandies will tend to run a little bit slower than I would a whiskey or a white dog or a vodka, probably even a little quicker through a column. But that gets a lot of I don't know. It probably is a little bit slower because you're going through a lot of reflux and it's taking a little longer maybe. So but yeah, it depends on what you're running. A good question. And rewind the show after we get done here. You can watch from the beginning. We covered quite a bit tonight about brandies and a lot of good questions actually. Yeah, it was. I like when Richard comes in here. He's a good distiller. He has a lot of knowledge. I'm not sure about Dent and Flint. I know that like sweet corn, absolutely huge difference. But yellow dent is probably the cheapest, and it's the cheapest way to get sugars, right? To make even the fuel. You know, if there was if they could do it with sugar and make fuel, they would definitely be using that. And that's why they use yellow dent to make the fuel, because it's converting it is the cheapest sugar that you can get. And it makes good corn liquor if you do it properly. It's good liquor. Yep, I agree. And low and slow, because a lot of people tend to run it too fast and get too anxious, and they think, slow's good, but it's taking 3 or 4 hours. Maybe if I crank it up just a little bit, make it go a little bit faster, it'd be better. And then they end up going too fast. That's why we preach slow and slow, because people tend to want to go too fast. They want to get through that shit. Yep. Sweet spot temp. Well, there's a chart, and if you're in the DIY shining and steel building or in the militia, you should be able to find this chart. But because of alcohol and water's azeotropic relationship, there is always a sweet spot that you will get to distill. The higher the alcohol concentration, the lower temperature needs to be. The higher that water concentration, the higher the temperature will need to be. So there is a sweet spot, and right along that curve is a sweet spot based on the proof of the alcohol or the percent of water that you have in the distillate, and you'll want to follow that curve. The easy answer. But yeah, generally speaking, what we make from a general mash without adding tails or something that back into it is 10-12%, which means about on that scale at about 195 degrees, you'll start seeing something happen, and you'll run it pretty much. You'll run most of your stuff if it's the 10 to 15% alcohol. You'll run it from about 190, low 190s up to 200. By the time you get towards the end of your run, you'll have to increase the temperature a little bit, because it'll be more water and less alcohol. So, but yeah, if you can find that chart, or I'll put it back up there if you want to screenshot it or something. Um, but yeah, it's in the file section and in the group pages if you want to jump on there and pull it down and add it. It's good to have. Yeah, for corn liquor, yeah, for all grain liquor, and Alan, a lot of people say the same thing. It's don't dilly dally, don't drip, don't if you got a 10, and that's with the larger steel. But a lot of people, if you got a 20, 30, 40 gallon steel and you're dripping, you're going too slow. If you got a 5 gallon and you're dripping, you probably should. That's what's going on up in the Great White North. Yeah, we were talking earlier about the tariffs and everything. I hate that, but it's definitely had an impact on the. Yeah, she's got a bigger steel, and she's most of the time they're dealing with grains, but yeah, you don't want to go too slow, and you don't want to go too fast. So there is a happy medium, and it really does depend on what you're running. You know, and whether it's a strip and run or a spirit run. So I wish there was a happy answer for neat answer for that. I hate those it depends kind of answers, but it really does on a lot of these. Awesome, 55 pound of cracked corn using the high temp or powder. I like that high temp amylase, man. I used to use the powder. I like that high temp, man. It's so easy. Get that high temp alpha amylase and that glucose at the end, man. Made corn liquor, making corn liquor so much easier and better. Right. And some will even spurt, and you know, so sometimes you'll get a little negative slope in your worm, and it'll kind of build up, and it takes a little pressure to push it out. So sometimes you'll get some that spurts. And if you do that, then you know you might have a little low spot in your worm that you need to work on or something like that. But yeah, every one of them is unique. That's for sure. All right, y'all. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you all back here Tuesday at 8 Eastern, and we'll field some more questions and hang out. And I guess this next Tuesday is going to be the 30th, so it'll be our uh, episode that is our pre-New Year episode. So maybe Clint's able to. I might bring him on. We can do a New Year's together. Yeah, we might bring a few on here. But we'll talk about that. But everybody have a great weekend with the rest of it. Have a great week. We will see you back here Tuesday at 8. Until then, everybody shine on. Peace out. Hope y'all had a happy holidays, and we will see you back here on Tuesday the 30th. Later, y'all. Peace out.